A boy trained non-stop, even though he was just a martial disciple while everyone else had already given up. But his talent was insane. The problem was he had no money to pay the exam fee that could change his life, and his family was already struggling. Even so, he finds out his aunt and uncle were willing to sacrifice everything for him, even their own health. With no other choice, he enters an underground arena where you only earn money if you win, and losing means walking away with nothing. He defeats several opponents with ease, until the final fight, against someone far stronger than he should be. He gets completely overwhelmed, unable to fight back, but he still refuses to fall, because that fight isn't just for him, it's for his family. And in that moment, something awakens. A system that turns his battle into training. In seconds, he evolves, surpasses his limits, and when he returns, the fight is already over. And without further delay, let's jump straight into the full video and see what happens next. Two friends were training at a gym. One of them complains that the punch hurt. He tells Su Hong that his Vajra fist has improved again, and asks if he has already reached the insightful level. Hong says he only reached the insightful level 2 days ago. Insightful is a martial arts classification in that world. The mastery of any martial art can be divided into 5 levels: beginner, insightful, proficient, mastered, and perfect. His friend is impressed and says that is incredible, because when it comes to Vajra fist alone, no one in that class compares to Hong. The protagonist asks if he has rested enough, because he would like to keep training. His companion shouts that he's a training maniac and says he is not going to train anymore because he needs to go home for dinner. He says goodbye to teacher Lee, who tells him to put on his clothes before leaving. The teacher walks over to the protagonist, saying that he finally managed to find him, and asks if he's not signing up for the martial arts exam. On top of that, he would also like to know why the protagonist still has not paid the 30,000 yuan registration fee, because registration closes next Monday. Hong asks the teacher if he cannot extend the date for a few more days. The teacher tells the protagonist that he knows his family is in a difficult situation. However, he cannot do anything about it because those are the rules and regulations. After everyone has already left, Hong continues his training completely alone while thinking about the cost of the registration fee. When he was only 3 years old, his parents died in a disaster. After that, he lived with his uncle and aunt's family. After they discovered that the protagonist had talent for martial arts, they did everything they could to support his training. Since that was an era of rampant beasts, martial artists were definitely high-income professionals. So he practiced martial arts to give them a good life. But now he is making his uncle and aunt's lives even harder. As soon as he finishes his training, the protagonist returns to his uncle and aunt's apartment. But before opening the door, he hears them talking, saying that the rent was almost overdue. However, they were willing to leave the rent unpaid so they could pay Hong's registration fee because his talent is very good and he will definitely make something of himself in the future, so they cannot ruin that opportunity. His aunt was even willing to stop taking her medicine, since the medicine was not going to cure her anyway, so that would cut down the expenses a little. But his uncle asked her not to do that because he would take on another job, and she only needed to stay inside the house and take care of herself. Hearing that kind of thing, Hong feels like an extremely heavy burden on his uncle and aunt, who treat him as if he were their own son. He tries to compose himself and opens the door with a smile on his face, saying that he is back. His aunt asks why he is coming back so late after training again, and apparently he must be exhausted. Hong offers to help with the massage, but his aunt asks if he really thinks she cannot do that little thing, and tells him to go straight back to his room so he can rest for the next day. His uncle tells him to listen to his aunt and go rest for a while because he must be exhausted. The protagonist obeys and goes straight to his room, but lies on the bed unable to sleep, thinking that his aunt and uncle have already done too much for him, and now it is time for him to deal with his own problems. And for a martial artist to earn tens of thousands of yuan in just a few days, there is only one place for him to go. The next day, in a building in the middle of the city, at the underground fighting arena, the announcer welcomed the audience to the Martial Disciple Arena Challenge. This was not a matter of life or death, only victory or defeat. She introduces the challenger, who is going to challenge the arena, Mr. Minotaur. That was the protagonist, because if he wins 4 consecutive matches, he will receive a grand prize of 60,000 yuan. Otherwise, he will not receive a single cent. The audience was a little dissatisfied, asking who that guy was because they had never seen him before and he was probably just a rookie. However, another person points out that a newcomer challenging the arena is basically asking for death. The commentator nudges the protagonist and tells him to show a little passion to liven up the atmosphere. He gets confused and asks how he is supposed to do that. She says he just has to provoke or insult them, because that is why newcomers are bothered so much. The protagonist says he understands and shouts that below a martial artist he is invincible, calling everyone weak and telling them to come fight immediately. The commentator is a little startled by that, and it splits the crowd somewhat. Some people think that arrogance is amazing, while others think he will not even know how he died. However, the goal was achieved. Thanks to that provocation, the entire audience began shouting, excited by the situation. Hong thinks that was already to be expected from an underground fighting arena. The killing intent is very strong. However, only by participating in that can he quickly gather enough money. Therefore, he hopes his insightful level Vajra Fist can help him win a few matches. The first fighter jumps into the arena shouting that the protagonist is just an arrogant kid, so he is going to play around with him a little. Hong immediately analyzes his opponent, thinking that he has a strong aura, but the lower half of his body is still lacking, so it may be easy to defeat him. Radhead charges forward at an impressive speed, asking why the protagonist is distracted, but Hong manages to win with just one punch. The commentator shouts that Minotaur has claimed a victory, and the audience goes wild. Another challenger enters the arena, wishing the protagonist good luck. However, he points out that unfortunately, Hong will not be so lucky once the fight starts. But Hong looks at him and tells him to hurry up and attack. The protagonist thinks that, judging by his challenger's physique, that person's strength should be good, so he can use him to test the power of his fist. The two exchange blows, and the challenger is impressed by the protagonist's strength. On the other hand, the protagonist thinks that his challenger's punch is not as strong as his own, and that, most likely, after taking one of his punches, he will completely lose control of the battle. Hong takes advantage of that opportunity because that man put too much force into his upper body, leaving his waist completely exposed. He lands another blow, kicking the guy with so much force that he sends him flying out of the arena and crashing into the stands. Hong tells the next one to come in, and the commentator becomes even more excited, saying that Minotaur has 2 consecutive victories. In one of the VIP rooms, a man was watching the protagonist's fights. He points out that the protagonist is not even a near martial artist, however. His strength far exceeds that of ordinary martial disciples, which makes him extraordinary. Hong wins another fight with impressive ease. The man says that the protagonist is not the best, but he is better than the rest, and someone like him is perfect for fixed matches. A masked man tells his teacher that he will take care of the protagonist, but the teacher tells him to remember not to reveal that he has already advanced to martial artist. Hong thinks that, apparently with his insightful level Vajra Fist, dealing with those ordinary martial disciples will not be difficult. And now he only needs one more victory to claim his grand cash prize. The commentator says that now White Fox will be the challenger, but the audience does not like that very much, asking if he is really going to fight because he is a near martial artist, and a near martial artist fighting a martial disciple is cheating. Hong focuses a little more, saying that apparently this final match will be harder than the others. However, he cannot lose no matter what. White Fox looks at the protagonist with a smile and tells him not to be afraid, pointing out that he knows how to control his strength. The commentator says that the final of the arena challenge is about to begin, and the two move forward to attack. Hong thinks that his realm is inferior to his opponent's, so he must give everything he has in his first move. The two clash with their blows, causing great pressure in the arena. But because of that, the protagonist realizes that something is wrong, because that kind of power is not the power of a near martial artist, since clearly that man is a true martial artist and deliberately suppressed his chi and blood. White Fox releases a little of his power and uses Furious Thunderfist, landing several consecutive strikes on the protagonist. Hong thinks this is terrifying power and wonders if this is the strength of a martial artist. The audience says that is the 3 Resonance Furious Thunderfist, and apparently the fight is already over. White Fox continues advancing and attacking without stopping, asking the protagonist if he really only knows how to defend himself, and telling him to fight back so he can assess his strength. Hong thinks that if this continues, he will definitely lose, so he must find an opportunity to counterattack. But one of White Fox's blows manages to break through the protagonist's guard, hitting him square in the face and sending him flying far away. Hong thinks that his consciousness is almost fading and that, with just a little more, he will end up passing out. White Fox steps on the protagonist, saying that he will not receive a single cent of prize money from that fight. However, his teacher is inviting the protagonist to join them and fight matches for them in the future. As long as he agrees, they will still give him the prize money from that match. But the protagonist says that he would never do something as shameful as that. White Fox presses down even harder on the protagonist, saying that he should think carefully before speaking because he cannot bear the consequences of refusing that offer. Hong says that they do that kind of thing and still call themselves martial artists. That makes White Fox furious, saying that in that case there is nothing left to discuss. And now he will have to cripple the protagonist so that becoming a martial artist will remain nothing more than a dream. He tries to deliver the final blow, but the protagonist refuses to lose and dodges the attack. He rises with a completely different aura around his body, repeating several times that he cannot be defeated there. White Fox is surprised, thinking that even after the protagonist took a furious thunderfist, he still managed to stand up. Hong remembers his family and his purposes and goals, saying that he wants to become a martial artist. He thinks that he needs to give his family a good life, and because of that, he cannot allow the many years of effort from his uncle and aunt to go to waste. He begins to question in his own mind whether he will really have to abandon his faith as a martial artist. However, his conviction and values are unquestionable. His iron will refuses to do something so shameful. Amid his slightly blurred vision, a system screen appears, asking what he is willing to sacrifice for his beliefs and values. Hong shouts only one word: everything. A fury rises inside his body, growing stronger and stronger. Suddenly, things begin to change, and he is taken somewhere he does not know. A powerful entity is right in front of him, and he asks who that being is. The voice only says that it is giving the protagonist this opportunity. Energy begins to circulate through Hong's body and turns into a screen right in front of him. He is surprised and asks what that is. There was his name, the value of his chi and blood, which is 85. His spirit is at 23 and his body constitution is at 3%. His current mission is the path of the arena. In addition, he possesses several martial skills, namely Vajra Fist at the insightful level, 7%, Fading Light Palm at the proficient level, 35%, and Air Steps at the proficient level, 56%. He realizes that thing seems to display all his attributes and asks whether it is a touchscreen. He presses on the mission notification. The system screen changes, saying that this is a random mission, the path of the arena. The road to becoming strong is full of thorns, so he needs to improve his martial arts there and deal with White Fox, who is waiting outside. His objective is to improve his martial arts by raising his Vajra Fist proficiency to mastered and elevating the air steps of Fading Light technique to insightful. Since this is a beginner's guide, there will not be any type of reward. His current progress is Vajra Fist at insightful, 17%, Fading Light Palm at proficient, 35%, and Air Steps at proficient, 50%. This mission can activate the beginner's guide. Hong analyzes the situation, asking what the beginner's guide is. But while he is looking at it, his clone appears behind him and tries to attack him. But the protagonist manages to dodge and realizes that his clone is also using Vajra Fist. In addition, his clone's strike is even more refined than his own, like the standard of a textbook. The protagonist gets excited, saying that he has such a good example right before his eyes. So how could he miss the chance to learn? He dodges another blow and tries to counterattack, but his clone grabs his hand and prepares to attack again. The protagonist realizes that perhaps his clone is showing him how to act, but the attack still lands on him directly, making him stumble back a little. He looks at the system screen and sees that his progress is at 10%, and before it was only 7%. That makes him surprised by the speed of improvement. He gets ready to keep fighting, saying that now this really allows him to upgrade his martial arts quickly. The exchange of blows starts getting serious. Both he and the clone begin attacking faster and faster. Before long, he manages to reach 100% in all his skills. Fading Light Palm advances to the insightful level, Air Steps also rises to the insightful level, and his Vajra Fist goes from insightful to mastered. With that, he is able to defeat his clone. However, he is already at his limit. He prepares himself once more for the fight and gives thanks for the training. The system congratulates him for completing the mission, the path of the arena, and the mission rewards have been distributed. Now the player can wake up and return to reality. Returning to the fight, White Fox says that the protagonist is playing with him and tries to attack, but Hong sees his opponent's movements as very slow and says that he is moving too slowly. He lands a direct punch to White Fox's face, shattering his mask and knocking him out with a single move. He looks at the commentator and says that he has just won the 4th match, asking when he will receive his cash prize. She cannot believe what she is seeing and congratulates Minotaur for successfully defending the arena, announcing that he has won the grand prize of 60,000. The teacher who had been watching cannot believe it. How is Vajra Fist at the mastered level? How can a martial disciple do that kind of thing? Most martial artists cannot even perform that kind of move. He tells his other 2 guards to follow the protagonist and find out his true identity. After collecting his prize, he was heading home and noticed that someone was following him. He quickly hides from the 2 of them and the guards begin searching, because the boss had instructed them to discover his true identity. Hong was on the upper part of the alley, seeing that those guys were still trying to track him down. An hour later, back at home, he arrives with the packages and throws the bills onto the table. His uncle is surprised and asks if the protagonist robbed a bank and where he got so much money. Hong explains that he had told the 2 of them that he was going to take part in training at a dojo. The owner thought he was very talented, so he decided to sponsor his martial arts training. But his uncle and aunt say that the protagonist had said that the dojo was a bit stingy. The protagonist tries to smooth things over with a charming smile. He holds his uncle and aunt's hands, asking if they are really doubting him. The two of them are charmed, saying that he has definitely never lied before, so that must be true. His aunt also says that now he's becoming a real success story. With everything settled, he goes up to the roof of the apartment and looks at the sky. He breathes in relief because the registration fee for the martial artist exam and the rent are taken care of. His aunt's medical expenses will not be a concern for now, and this time he managed to turn danger into safety thanks to the system that appeared completely out of nowhere. He opens the system screen again and realizes that aside from the martial arts levels, the other stats do not seem to have changed. He sees something called martial Dao points and is surprised, seeing that this kind of function exists here too. The system says that he managed to defeat an opponent above his level and gained 67 martial Dao points. The points can increase Qi and blood and martial arts, so he needs to use them as appropriate. He uses his points to raise his Qi and blood to level 90, and suddenly he feels something very strong inside his body, as if his energy were growing exponentially within him. With his Qi and blood at 90, that reaches the level of a martial artist. He decides to add all the other remaining martial Dao points to his Qi and blood. As he increases the stat, he realizes that not only has his physical strength improved significantly, but his injuries have basically been completely healed. And now he possibly has an infinite supply of power in his body and needs to find a place to test his current strength. He leaps from building to building, thinking that he could go to the school's training field because they have a combat power detector there. He goes to Xingcheng First High School to the open-air training field. He approaches the level 1 combat detector and focuses, thinking that he only needs to use 70% of his strength for the test. One of his eyes changes color, and the energy in his body starts becoming even denser. He punches the machine, but he is surprised by the result. He had completely destroyed the machine and says that apparently the quality of those testing instruments is very low and asks whether the school will make him pay for it. Suddenly, someone says that he is hearing a lot of noise and asks what they are doing in the middle of the night. The protagonist says that it is time to run and quickly leaves the place. The old man looks at the completely destroyed equipment and asks which idiot broke the testing instrument in the school training field, because only those two brats named Chen Shan and Li Tu could do something like that at the school. And when classes start, he will definitely teach both of them a good lesson. The next day at school, inside the gymnasium, everyone was gathered together. One student asks his friend what happened to Chen Shan. His friend says that he heard Chen Shan broke the testing instrument in the training field in the middle of the night yesterday, and he refused to admit it, so the principal punished him. The protagonist thinks that Chen Shan took the blame for him. The principal asks all the students to calm down because today he invited an old comrade in arms, a level 3 martial artist named Chen Tian. He will teach everyone a C-rank martial art called Furious Thunderfist, and everyone must learn it well. The students are impressed, saying that this is the first time they have seen a level 3 martial artist. C-rank martial arts taught in outside martial arts schools cost hundreds of thousands in tuition. The protagonist remembers that White Fox had used this same attack against him. Punches with the impact of 3 strikes are truly powerful. For C-rank martial arts like that one, if the user wants to learn them outside, just the registration fee alone costs at least hundreds of thousands. Because of that, he must make the most of this opportunity. Chen Tian calls the students and tells them to stop talking because he will demonstrate only 10 times from beginning to end. So how much they learn depends only on them. He begins to perform the movements, saying that the stance must be fierce and domineering. At the entry level, a booming sound will be emitted with every punch. When it reaches the proficient level, it can produce 3 reverberations, 5 reverberations at the insightful level, and 7 at the mastered level, which is exactly his current level. In addition, he points out that upon reaching the perfect realm, it can produce 9 reverberations. However, they do not need to be so ambitious, because it is already good enough if they can begin using this move. After explaining the introduction, Chen Tian says that he will begin the second demonstration, and everyone should try to follow his movements. Several hours later, many students were giving up because they were completely exhausted. The protagonist's friend, who was also exhausted, asks how anyone can learn that because C-rank martial arts are very difficult. He looks at Hong and asks if he managed to learn it, but the protagonist was no longer there. Among the other students, Chen Shan was laughing, saying that he successfully entered the beginner level. The protagonist's friend thinks that it is no wonder everyone says Chen Shan is the #1 genius of the school and asks how his brain even works. The principal tells Chen Tian that this is Chen Shan, the #1 genius of the school, and asks if he is interested in giving him some guidance. Chen Tian asks if that is really considered a genius, because in other cities he would only be considered average. They go outside and Chen Tian tells the principal that unfortunately, his students that year are not good enough, and he came there for nothing. The principal says that having one beginner is already good enough and asks whether Chen Tian really expects to find another great genius. Chen Tian explains that martial arts training is extremely cruel, and talent is truly very important. The principal agrees, saying that relying only on effort without talent is absolutely impossible. But both of them are surprised by what they were seeing right in front of them. In the middle of the field, Hong was training, giving it everything he had, and Chen Tian shouts, saying that this is Furious Thunderfist with 7 reverberations, because he cannot believe that school has such a strong master. The principal says that it is impossible because he has never heard of anyone that strong at that school, but upon observing the protagonist's clothes, he says that he is in fact a student. Hong demonstrates his attack once again, and Chen Tian says that he only taught that for half a day, and even so a student already reached the mastered level. The principal nearly goes crazy upon hearing the 9 reverberations and asks Chen Tian if he is hearing correctly. He asks what is wrong with that student, but Chen Tian was so impressed that his entire body was trembling. He carefully observes the protagonist's movements and says that he finally understands everything. He uses his own Furious Thunderfist and manages to produce 8 reverberations. The principal realizes that he managed to advance. Chen Tian says that Furious Thunderfist just gave him inspiration. Otherwise, he might never have managed to advance in this lifetime. He runs off, saying that now is not the time to talk about that, and asks the principal to immediately go check who that student is. But as soon as they arrive where the protagonist was, he had already disappeared. Hong, who was already on his way home, says that he did not imagine that cultivating a C-rank martial art would be so exhausting, far exceeding the D-rank Vajra Fist. He opens the system and realizes that his Thunder Fist has reached the perfect realm, and now he needs to figure out how to earn martial Dao points. In order to push himself as much as possible, that way he will be able to advance to the martial artist level as quickly as possible. He points out that this time, it is not a life or death battle like the last time. However, he would like to know whether in a normal match against someone he could gain martial Dao points. He goes to his workplace known as Furious Thunder Martial Arts. One of the people walks over to him and asks what he is doing there. Hong explains that he had nothing else to do, so he came there to participate. A purple-haired man throws one of the members to the ground, asking how he dares say that the teacher does not teach well, because if his comprehension is bad, then it is bad, and asks why the guy keeps making excuses. Hong asks what is going on there. The protagonist's friend explains that he had not been going there for a while, so he probably does not know, but that is the new instructor, and he is very strong. However, he despises commoners like the two of them, and his classes are superficial. The teacher's direct disciple, named Lion, is also very strong. Lion grabs another member by the clothes and says that his level is extremely low, so how does he dare challenge him? But before he could land a strike, the protagonist grabs his arm, telling him to stop before things get even more serious. Lion looks at the protagonist and asks who he is to be so bold and tells him to step into the ring and settle the matter. Hong says that he is ready since he wants to test something. Suddenly, a man arrives and shouts, asking why there is so much noise, and points out that class is already starting. Lion tells the protagonist that he got very lucky. Hong thinks that guy is being very arrogant and will soon have to learn a real lesson. The teacher says that this will be his last day teaching the Furious Sea Spear art, and as usual, he will only demonstrate that movement once. He performs one movement and looks at the students, thinking that he will only demonstrate it once, because he does not believe a bunch of useless people can learn it. But Hong carefully watches the movements, and as soon as the teacher finishes the move, throws the spear to the ground and goes back into his room, saying that now what they can learn depends only on them. All the students begin to complain, saying that one demonstration is robbery, since the last row cannot see the demonstration clearly. The protagonist focuses, saying that the essence of that spear art is as if the spear were a dragon treading on the sea, and its momentum is like endless giant waves. He begins to perform the movements quickly and perfectly. All the other students are impressed, saying that he seems to have understood it perfectly. Lion opens the door again and asks why there's so much talking there, asking who learned it and whether they really can learn it. He walks to the middle of all the students and looks at the protagonist, saying that apparently he really did learn it. Lion thinks that he needs to test him, because if he really is a genius, that will be interesting. He picks up a spear and says that he will give a few tips about spear arts. Hong says that is fine. The protagonist's friend tells him to be very careful because although that guy is not that good, he is still very strong, but the protagonist tells his friend not to worry. Hong prepares for the confrontation and asks his opponent to teach him everything he knows. Lion goes all out, saying that the protagonist is just an arrogant brat. Lion's Furious Sea Spear art is at the insightful level, and the protagonist is at the proficient level. Lion asks how that is possible, how his Furious Sea Spear art is already at the proficient level. The two spears collide, and Lion says that the protagonist is not even a martial artist, so how could he have cultivated it to the proficient realm so quickly? Hong uses even more force and sends Lion's spear flying away. The system says that he managed to defeat a martial artist above his level and gained another 35 martial Dao points. Hong is happy because this was what he expected. Regular fights can also yield martial Dao points, and now he can find more people to train with. Leon drops to his knees on the ground, refusing to believe it, saying that it is absolutely impossible. How did he manage to cultivate the furious sea spear art to the proficient level so quickly? Completely consumed by rage, he charges at the protagonist from behind, asking what all his years of hard training were even for. Hong remains standing still, simply watching, and the teacher appears shouting that this is already enough. The teacher walks up to Leon and slaps him across the face in front of everyone, saying that if he does not even dare to face a defeat, then what kind of martial artist is he? The teacher is impressed, thinking that the protagonist saw his demonstration only once and learned the furious sea spear art up to the proficient realm. Even the geniuses of the imperial capital or magic city are not this absurd. He makes Leon bow, thinking that he really does have talent, but he is far too arrogant, and it is good for him to be humiliated by a genius like the protagonist. The teacher speaks politely, saying that all of this is the fault of his negligent discipline, so he would like to ask for forgiveness. Hong thinks that the teacher's attitude changed quickly. As he heads home, he thinks that he is very exhausted. However, he gained quite a lot because not only did he learn Furious Thunderfist and Furious Sea Spear art, but he also earned Martial Dao points. The school exam is in a few days, and all the students with money have already prepared high-quality light alloy weapons. So he also needs to prepare a weapon for the exam as quickly as possible. He thinks that that long spear is quite comfortable to use, and he could very well use a spear from now on. But he still needs to buy a long, light alloy spear. However, the money he currently has is not enough even for training, much less to buy a light alloy weapon, since just one spear costs nearly 70,000. He keeps walking, wondering what other ways there are to make money. As he passes in front of a shop, he hears an announcement on the television saying that in the wilderness region of Xingcheng, the beasts have been increasing every day, and the city lord is gathering martial artists to hunt them with generous rewards. That makes him start thinking of a plan. Meanwhile, at home, the protagonist's aunt was scolding her husband, saying that Hong gave them a good amount of money last time, so why does he keep working himself to death? He explains that the protagonist is still very young, so how could they place the whole burden of supporting the family on Hong? In addition, he points out that he needs to earn more for the family while he is still able to work. Hong opens the door and tells the two of them that he is back, and they are happy to see him again. He offers once again to help bandage his uncle. His aunt lets out a sigh, saying that she already told him that he should rest when he comes home. While helping apply the bandages, the protagonist tells his uncle that now he can make money, so his uncle no longer needs to go to work because it is much better for him to stay at home and take care of things. His uncle says that it is very good to hear that, but unfortunately, he cannot remain idle. With a smile on his face, he asks Hong not to worry because he is making a little more for the daily expenses and will not push himself so hard. His aunt says that the protagonist will need a lot of money to train in martial arts in the future, so they want to save as much as they can to help him with that. Hong thinks that his uncle and aunt are used to living in poverty. Unless he earns enough money for a lifetime, they will not retire in peace. Therefore, he cannot miss this opportunity to hunt beasts for the generous reward. He goes once again to the rooftop of his home, thinking that the wilderness region is dangerous. And to be a little safer, he must improve his strength as much as he can. Because of that, he will once again put all the points he earned into Qi and Blood. He manages to raise his Qi and Blood to 95.2 points. And now he is only one step away from becoming a martial artist. 2 days later, in the school gymnasium during the night, Hong was completely exhausted, lying on the ground, but all his skills were at the perfect level. He points out that it took 2 whole days, but he finally cultivated all his martial arts skills to the perfect realm. And now he is ready to leave the city. On Saturday, at the city's martial artist base, people were gathering and he finally managed to get there. He starts walking through the place, thinking that although he has seen that place many times on TV, this is his first time at a martial artist base. And martial artists, who are usually hard to find, are everywhere in the streets there. Hong takes a look at the rewards and sees that unranked fierce beasts are worth 300 blue star coins. Level 1 early stage beasts are worth 1,000 coins. Level 1 mid-stage beasts are worth 3,000 coins. Level 1 late-stage beasts are worth 5,000 coins. In addition, after he eliminates a beast, its left ear must be cut off as proof, otherwise no payment will be made. The protagonist thinks that this is very primitive. A man goes to the shop to sell his spoils and asks the beautiful lady to help him calculate how much it is worth. The protagonist thinks that the contents of those bags must be the left ears of the beasts that were hunted. Suddenly, a group of hunters starts approaching, telling everyone to get out of the way. One of the men asks whether they do not see young Master Ye approaching. Hong keeps looking and thinks that that outfit and behavior look very much like White Fox from the underground arena. Some people were bothered by that kind of behavior. Hong and the young master exchange glances, and Hong continues on his way, thinking that not only are the beasts dangerous, but humans are as well, so he must be extremely careful. At the city exit, the guard says that the protagonist is still very young and asks whether he is really going into the wilderness alone, but Hong simply remains silent. The officer lets him pass, but thinks that he is just another ignorant and fearless boy. As soon as he steps outside, he thinks that he needs to come back with a full haul. After walking through the forest for 2 hours, he was already a little irritated because he had not seen a single beast, and apparently all the monsters around the forest had already been hunted. So he decides to run a little deeper into the forest. However, he notices something, and soon a monster appears right in front of him. He thinks that this is probably the level 1 early stage Glue Moon Wolf, just as described in the textbooks, and this is the first time he has seen one in person. The wolf tries to attack him, but the protagonist manages to dodge and uses Furious Thunderfist, eliminating the beast with a single move. He looks at his hand and realizes that it was trembling, because apparently this is how he is supposed to feel when fighting a monster, and it is more exciting than he imagined. He is happy, because now he can eliminate one of those level 1 early stage monsters with just one move, which makes him wonder what it would be like against a level 1 mid-stage beast. But suddenly, a level 1 mid-stage fierce beast appears, the Furious Black Bear. But the result is the same. The bear is easily knocked out. He thinks that apparently with his current strength, as long as he does not provoke a level 2 beast, he will not encounter much danger. He takes the ears so he can show that he managed to eliminate the monsters, and the system says that he can advance to martial artist as quickly as possible, which excites him. However, he hears a very loud noise and an alarming presence. He looks toward the direction where he felt it, wondering what kind of monster that could be. Curious, he decides to go over there and take a look. As soon as he sees it, he is shocked, because that is the level 1 late-stage fierce beast known as the giant black python. 2 adventurers were trying to defend themselves from the python's attacks, but they were completely knocked out. Because of that, the python ended up noticing the protagonist's presence and tried to attack him, but he managed to avoid the first strike. However, it moves at an astonishing speed and manages to hit him before he even touches the ground. With just that single blow, he is already seriously injured, but he calms his mind and picks up the spear in front of him. The python charges at him once again, but Hong manages to dodge the attack and retreat a little. He thinks that to defeat a monster of that type, at the very least, several martial artists of the same level would need to cooperate in battle. However, he thinks that all his martial arts have already been cultivated to perfection, and that he can already easily eliminate a level 1 mid-stage Furious Black Bear. Therefore, he now has the ability to fight against the giant black python. He pushes off from a tree and jumps toward the snake, throwing the spear with perfect precision and hitting part of the snake's body. But that was not enough. He runs to the spear quickly and says that he needs to do it again. He throws his spear once more, once again managing to cause considerable damage to the python. He tries to retrieve the spear while moving. He thinks that the size difference between the two of them is too great, so it is difficult to eliminate it with his strikes. Therefore, his best option is to weaken it as much as possible and then find a good opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. The serpent's tail was coming at him, but the protagonist manages to use Furious Thunderfist to dodge the attack. He thinks that after a successful attack, he needs to immediately move away from the giant python and find another opportunity to attack again and continue the plan. He thinks that fighting this way is more exhausting, however, it is the safest thing to do. He realizes that the python was also already reaching its limit, and he only needs to maneuver a few more times to bring it down. However, he hears a noise behind him, and when he looks, he sees that big guy approaching while laughing. Since he was already a little tired, he ends up taking a direct hit and being thrown backward. He gets up and asks who they are. The young master says that apparently they have met again and asks what the protagonist thinks about handing that giant python over to him. The young master says that when he saw the protagonist leaving the city alone, he thought he would be killed. However, he did not expect the protagonist's luck to be so good, because not only did he survive, but he also managed to find an injured python. Hong realizes that guy just said he picked up the weakened python, which means he has only just arrived. In addition, all 5 of them are cultivators and they have the advantage in numbers, so he cannot confront them directly. The muscular man advances again, shouting at the protagonist and asking whether he did not hear the young master say that he wants the python. Hong becomes furious and says that earlier he was knocked back because of a sneak attack, and asks the muscular man whether he really thinks he cannot be defeated. The two clash with their blows, but the protagonist's speed is much greater. The muscular man is horrified by that power and ends up getting knocked out with just one punch. The young master says that is an extremely powerful Vajra fist, which confirms that the protagonist really is the Minotaur. Hong realizes that the young master is White Fox. Ye says that the protagonist was the first person to humiliate him in front of so many people. He orders his lackeys to attack and eliminate the protagonist, but Hong grabs the spear and begins to retreat. The group tries to chase him, but he manages to hide. In addition, the young master says that this forest is very dense, so it is easy to get ambushed. Therefore, they must be careful. The young man in the red jacket says that they have the advantage in numbers, so why are they afraid of just one person? But that distraction was enough. The protagonist managed to launch a precise sneak attack and knocked him out in seconds. Ye looks at his companion and asks how that boy can be so fast. The other two people in the group begin to get scared, telling the young master that this is Furious Thunderfist with 9 reverberations, and that not even a third-stage cultivator can master it perfectly. Ye tells them to shut up and starts getting worried, thinking that the protagonist has Vajra Fist at the perfect level and Furious Thunderfist also at perfect. He asks how that can be possible. Hong, who was on top of a tree, analyzes the situation and thinks that if he had not just fought the python and spent so much of his vital energy, he could have crushed all of them directly. But now he can only find opportunities to defeat them one by one. He throws his spear, causing a distraction, and advances, eliminating another member of the team. And he disappears right afterward. The last member becomes desperate, telling the young master that that boy is very strong and they need to leave. But Ye asks whether this is some kind of joke because they must eliminate that guy right there. The protagonist continues moving at an astonishing speed around them and knocks out the last follower. Ye cannot understand how, after only a few days, the protagonist became so strong. Hong passes behind Ye, making him frightened, as if he were playing with his prey. He advances once more, saying that it is finally the last one's turn. But Ye manages to figure out the direction from which the protagonist was attacking, and shouts at him not to think that he has been cornered. He uses his void-destroying finger skill, but the protagonist manages to dodge. Ye, who was already overwhelmed by fear, begins firing his attacks several times in multiple directions. But Hong continues only moving at high speed while using that time to analyze the situation. He realizes that that power is very great and that martial art is not low ranking, perhaps even reaching B rank. Ye realizes that he does not stand the slightest chance and shouts while cursing, saying that he has already memorized the protagonist's face and that if he dares to hurt him, then he will come back and eliminate his entire family. That had the complete opposite effect of what Ye wanted. As soon as Hong heard the phrase about killing his entire family, he fixed his rage on his prey and shot toward Ye. The young master was still acting arrogantly, saying that his uncle is the chief of the cultivator's base and his father is... Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist appears behind him with a murderous look, saying that he prefers the way Ye acted before, with arrogance and a powerful appearance. He lands a direct punch on White Fox's face, sending him off the top of the cliff. Hong walks over there and says that Ye's worst mistake was threatening him using his family. Ye, who is already completely ruined, asks how the protagonist can be so strong because that is impossible since clearly he is not a cultivator. So what exactly is he? The python, which was still injured and completely enraged, approaches from behind and smashes Ye into the ground. Hong realizes that he wasted too much time with those idiots, and now the python has already recovered its strength. The 3 who had been knocked out earlier begin to wake up, saying that guy really is a monster. One of them asks where the young master might be. Could it be that he dealt with that boy? But suddenly one of them begins to hear a very loud noise approaching. They say that finally that target has appeared and now he will not escape anymore. However, the protagonist only tells them to get out of the way because the python was chasing him. Because of his actions, the python ended up eliminating 2 cultivators and the system counted it because the protagonist eliminated them indirectly and gained 30 points for each, totaling 60. Hong thinks that he really did not expect to gain experience points that way. He notices the serpent's tail coming toward him again and jumps to dodge, while thinking that after so many battles, his martial arts points are enough for him to advance and truly become a cultivator. And now he only has to find a place where he can safely break through. While fleeing from the serpent, he manages to find a small cave and thinks that it will be perfect. He runs there, and the serpent tries to enter, but it cannot get all the way through. Seeing that he has no time to waste, Hong opens the system and begins increasing his level as quickly as he can. He realizes that his vital energy is increasing and his whole body is becoming very hot. The temperature rises so high that he feels as if magma is running through his veins instead of blood. He finally managed to raise his vital energy to level 100 and with that, advanced to first stage Cultivator. He stands up full of energy and thinks that he really did become a true Cultivator, and now it is his turn to play a little. He charges at the python and with just one blow sends it flying far away. He continues attacking, but his body was already reaching its limit. He grabs his spear and drives it into the serpent's body to pin it to the ground, and uses his thunderfist smashing the python's head into the ground. After defeating it, the system records that he gained a total of 92 martial arts points. And now, although the python was already injured, he can directly withstand its attacks. He remembers that he needs to bring the python's ear to receive the payment. However, snakes do not have ears, so he does not know what to do. But he decides to deal with that later. He returns to Ye's body and sees that he is pretending to be dead and says that apparently things ended too easily for him. Hong begins searching through the young master's belongings in an attempt to find the advanced martial art he had been using. As soon as he finds the void-destroying finger art, he returns to the cave beside the serpent to spend the night. He begins reading the book and realizes that the introductory methods for void-destroying finger were all recorded there, and now he will use the system to master it quickly. He enters his subspace and summons his clone to appear. The two begin clashing with void-destroying finger. Very quickly, he manages to advance to the beginner level, but he is eliminated by his own clone. He returns to reality and realizes that his body was under great pressure, and that was already to be expected from a B-rank martial art. Just learning the beginner level can place immense pressure on him, and now it is time to find a monster and test its power. 3 days later, he eliminated the last monster that had been attacking him, and now he had finally reached the perfect realm, and that power truly lived up to its status as a B-rank martial art. With everything ready, it was time to return. Meanwhile, at the Cultivator's base, a group of people was turning in what they had collected, totaling 230,000, and that impressed some people because it represented many months of hard work. However, on the other side, an even greater commotion was taking place. No one could believe how much the protagonist had brought back. The woman who was counting everything said that there was a total of 72 first-stage beasts, 83 mid-stage beasts, and 17 high-level beasts, totaling 406,000 coins. Hong thinks that perhaps he killed too many and should have brought a little less. Suddenly, another even louder noise breaks out, leaving everyone startled and asking whether the base had been attacked. But it was a completely enraged man who had smashed through a wall, ordering all the agents to seal off the base and not let even a fly escape. He is the base administrator, Ye Qi, and the uncle of young master Ye Feng. Someone approaches the administrator and asks what happened. Ye Qi shouts that his nephew and the 4 cultivators who were with him are all dead. The people are shocked, but all of them say that this is very good, because if it were not for that idiot's identity, he himself would have been responsible for killing that imbecile. Ye Qi says that a B-rank martial art that belonged to his nephew is missing. Therefore, all cultivators must be searched, and only after being cleared of suspicion will they be allowed to leave. Hong thinks that, judging by those people's bodies, they were killed by the giant python, so there is nothing that can link their deaths to the protagonist. A woman walks up to Ye Qi and says something that makes his gaze shift toward Hong. The protagonist wonders whether they are planning to go after him. Ye Qi walks up to Hong and, with a frightening aura, says that he heard Hong alone managed to eliminate beasts worth more than 400,000 coins, which shows that his skills are impressive. The woman continues accusing the protagonist, saying that it was him, because at the very least he is an early first-stage cultivator, otherwise how could he have killed so many beasts? Then she says that he must have taken the young master's backpack and orders them to search him immediately. The 2 guards release their power and tell the protagonist not to resist or they will not be polite. But Hong points his spear at them, making the 2 of them stammer. The guard thinks that he did not even see how fast that boy managed to draw his spear. The protagonist points out that he is a student of Xingcheng First High School and asks whether they really want to search him. Ye Qi becomes a little thoughtful about that matter because the principal of that school is notoriously protective of his students, and it would not be wise to play around with that situation. But even so, he still thinks the protagonist is highly suspicious. And if he was able to hunt that many beasts, he is definitely a genius. If they make a mistake and offend someone so important to the school, it will not be worth it. Ye Qi steps forward and releases his killing aura, saying that his nephew was attacked and his family's martial art was stolen, so he must find the culprit and he hopes the protagonist will cooperate. Hong also releases his aura and looks directly into the administrator's eyes, saying that he hopes Ye Qi will not falsely accuse innocent people. Ye Qi offers compensation of 10,000 for the search, but Hong says he will agree to be searched for 30,000. The protagonist thinks that that stupid blonde guy was killed by the python, and as long as those people cannot find the martial art, nothing will cause him to be incriminated. The administrator takes a deep breath and ends up agreeing to the 30,000 offer. While he is being searched, Hong tells them to look carefully because he does not want to be falsely accused. After the search, the guards say that they found nothing. The administrator takes a deep breath, says that everything is fine, and orders them to hand over the 30,000 to him. Hong smiles and thinks that he did the right thing by cleaning up all his mess and burning that book. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. As soon as the protagonist is released, he starts to leave. The administrator tells everyone to keep searching because no one is leaving until everyone has been searched. Hong thinks that first he needs to go back home, take a shower, change clothes, and then head straight to the Cultivators Association for the assessment and registration because he needs to get his hands on the guide art as quickly as possible. Inside the hotel above the Cultivators base, he looks at the system and realizes that he had accumulated a total of 534 martial arts points because he had been so focused on cultivating void-destroying finger and hunting beasts over the past few days that he had not even bothered using his points. At the moment, he is at the initial level as a cultivator, and if he spends 100 vital energy points, he can advance to a mid-level cultivator and 200 more points to advance to the next level. He thinks that if he uses all his martial arts points to increase his vital energy, he can raise it by 53.4, and he is a little over 40 vital energy points away from reaching the intermediate stage. However, neither spirit nor mortal body has been upgraded yet, so he still does not know what their effects are. He thinks that in any case, he has plenty of points to spend, so he will increase them to see what their effects are. He raises his spirit a little, but does not notice any kind of change. On the other hand, when he increases his mortal body, he notices an increase in strength and, because of that, decides to add a little more. At present, his vital energy is at 123, his spirit is at 26.5, and his physique, which is the mortal body, is at 36.1%. He decides to put 200 martial arts points into vital energy and experiences an incredible increase in power. And with the rest of his points, he adds them to spirit. He points out that it feels as if he has infinite power inside him. His body grew and his muscles became extremely larger, but his body gradually recovered, making him return to his normal physique. Hong breathes deeply in relief because, fortunately, his body managed to return to normal. Because if he had remained muscular, he would not have known how to explain that to the people he knows. 1 hour later at the Cultivators Association, the protagonist greets the receptionist, saying that he is there for the Cultivator assessment. She says that a staff member will take him there shortly. One of the women accompanying him says that he is very young and asks whether this is his first time taking the assessment. In addition, she explains that a first-stage cultivator needs 100 vital energy points and a combat power score above 1,000 to pass the test. She wishes him good luck. Hong analyzes 2 people behind him. One of them asks whether that boy is really there alone and whether he does not have a master. The other guy, a little older, says that he is there to take the cultivator assessment. However, he is very young, so he must just be doing it for the experience. Fangia throws a punch at the machine to take the test. The machine says that his vital energy was 102 points, but his combat power was only 992, so the assessment failed. Li Ming had a score of 1,763 and passed. The examiner calls the next person to take the combat power test. Li Ming walks up to the machine and throws a punch. The machine records a total of 1,763. The people are impressed because that value is basically the level of a mid-level first-stage cultivator. The people say that Jiang Ming has a disciple named Li Ming. Therefore, it is no wonder that he is a genius and is using his full potential. Hong thinks that Jiang Ming has a disciple named Lai Yan and wonders how many other disciples he has. Li Ming comes out of the assessment and with a smile on his face, tells the protagonist that now it is his turn. But Li Ming acts smug, saying that he took that assessment at that age because he is a genius. And he points out that the protagonist is also taking the assessment at a very young age, which means he might also be a genius. But the question is, can he compare it to a true genius? But before he could even leave, the people are shocked, saying that that vital energy detector must be broken, asking how that boy's vital energy could be so high. The examiner says that the protagonist's vital energy is at 123 and that he passed. Li Ming asks how that can be possible. However, he thinks that there is no need to rush because high vital energy is useless. Combat power is everything, and that is what truly matters. The examiner leads the protagonist away, saying that now it is time for the combat power test. Hong gets ready to throw a punch and thinks that he advanced to cultivator and upgraded his physique, so his strength increased a lot during the test. Therefore, 4/10 of his strength should be enough. However, he becomes worried, thinking that if he goes too easy and his combat power is not enough, he will fail. So he decides to use 5/10 of his strength, which is equivalent to 50%. But as soon as he lands his punch, he sends the testing machine flying, completely destroying it against the wall. The people cannot understand how that is possible. Li Ming asks if he is really seeing things correctly because after the protagonist struck the detector with one punch, it flew away. On top of that, he did not use any martial art. Even though it was completely destroyed, the combat power detector still displayed 3004. The people shout, saying that the combat power standard of a high-level first-stage cultivator is only 3,000 points. Because of that, they cannot believe such an unimaginable number. The people who were upstairs tell the teacher that it is that boy again and he is practically a monster. The teacher says that it is no wonder. Inside her office, the president of the Martial Arts Association of Xingcheng, named Wu Lingxian, was irritated, saying that another genius had appeared in the neighboring branch city of Yang, and they boast about it every day, but she thinks it is a bunch of nonsense. Lingxian becomes worried because if she cannot find a new genius, her position will be finished. Suddenly, one of her subordinates bursts through the door, calling for her and saying that a monster appeared during the cultivator assessment. He shouts, saying that an early first-stage cultivator, relying only on physical strength, punched the testing device and his combat power reached more than 3,000 points. In the central hall of the Cultivators Association, a man finds the protagonist, saying that he will take him to the second floor to register him as a cultivator. After that, he will be able to receive his payments. But Lingxian appears at the top of the stairs, saying that man's job is finished there, and that she herself will personally take care of that boy. She asks if the protagonist is Su Hong. She introduces herself, saying that her name is Wu Lingxian, and she is the president of the city branch of the Martial Artists Association. She asks him to come with her. The protagonist agrees, but he is a little surprised, wondering whether she really is the president of the Cultivators Association, because everyone says that she is a fifth-stage cultivator, but she is not exactly what he imagined. In the president's office, she asks if he is a student at Xingcheng First High School, because that old man, Li Chengshan, had been complaining to her a little earlier. He was saying that the school had produced only 2 ordinary first-stage cultivators that year, but it turned out that they had been hiding a true genius. Hong asks her why he is inside the office, because he only came to the association to register as a cultivator and receive his payment and the guiding art. Lingxian tells him not to worry because she already had them process the protagonist's cultivator identification and monthly subsidy. As for the guiding art, she herself will teach it personally. She asks how much he currently understands about guiding arts. Hong says that the book says that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has different attributes, and guiding arts are methods for absorbing that spiritual energy and becoming stronger. Absorbing spiritual energy of different attributes requires a corresponding guiding art. Lingxian explains that what the book says is not wrong, but guiding arts are more than just cultivation methods. She creates a small flame in her hand as an example, and says that this is the celestial flame guiding art that she cultivates. With it, she mainly absorbs spiritual energy of the fire attribute. While strengthening her, it also imbues her attacks with the destructive power of the fire attribute. If she can manifest attribute-based attacks externally, that can also increase her range. However, for a first-stage cultivator, it does not matter to wrap the fists with an attribute. Even a trace of an attribute would already be very good. The protagonist is impressed to see that guiding arts can also be used to attack, because he thought they were only cultivation methods through the absorption of spiritual energy, since the book never mentioned that kind of use. The president explains that there are 7 attributes of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, namely metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, and wind. Although each attribute has its own advantages and disadvantages, if they are speaking purely about attack power, lightning is in first place, metal in second, and fire in third. However, which specific guiding art he can cultivate depends on the user's compatibility. Hong is surprised to discover that he cannot cultivate any guiding art he wants. Lingxian holds a sphere in her hand and explains that it is a crystal ball used to test compatibility. The larger the glowing area, the greater the compatibility. Ordinary cultivators normally have around 20 to 30%, but she is around 80%, which is already considered very high. On the other hand, she believes that the protagonist is a genius, so he can definitely surpass 90%. Hong holds the sphere in his hand, thinking that the president became a 5th-stage cultivator at a very young age. She is an absolute genius and only has 80%. If he could reach 90%, that would be too outrageous. But suddenly, the sphere begins to shine so brightly that it fills the entire place. She shouts that this is very good because his compatibility with the fire attribute is 100%. She asks if he knows what that means, but the protagonist says that he does not. Linxian explains that this means he can absorb 100% of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth attributed to fire without losing a single drop. At present, she has 80% compatibility, so when she absorbs spiritual energy of the fire attribute, only 80% can be used. That is why she is a 5th stage cultivator and the president of the association, which means the protagonist's future achievements will be even greater than hers. Because she never expected that a small city like that could produce such a monstrous talent, not inferior to those of the demonic capital and the imperial capital regions. The protagonist continues holding the sphere and thinks that although the fire attribute is not bad, he still prefers the lightning attribute more, because if he had the lightning attribute, that would be very good. But again, the sphere begins to shine with the lightning attribute. She is left speechless as she watches that, and the protagonist tells her that apparently his compatibility with the lightning attribute also seems to be 100%. Linxian is left speechless, thinking that it cannot be true because he has 100% compatibility for both lightning and fire. So what kind of monster is that boy standing right in front of her, because he is practically an abomination? But the sphere changes color, and the protagonist tells the president that the wind attribute also seems to be at 100%. She refuses to believe it, saying that it is far too absurd. A few minutes later, the two of them were sitting on the sofa. She says that this cannot be right because there is no way that such a thing is happening right in front of her. Because all the attributes are full, all of them reached 100% and she must be dreaming. Once she considered herself a great genius, because a 5th stage female cultivator at the age of 30 is very rare. But when she faced opponents who defied common sense, she realized that she was only an ordinary person. Only then did she understand that to defeat a monster, you need an even more terrifying monster. Existences that ordinary people cannot understand. Hong was analyzing that situation and says that all 7 attributes have 100% compatibility, and if he cultivates only one, like lightning, and abandons the other 6, it seems like far too much of a waste. He points out that this is very troublesome. He asks the president if she can give him a copy of all 7 attributes of the guiding arts. She explains that a person's energy is limited, and even if his talent is extremely high, it is better to cultivate only 1 or 2 types. In the past, some people tried to cultivate 7 guiding arts simultaneously and remained 1st stage cultivators even after decades of cultivation. Hong says that he cannot make a decision right now, so he would like to cultivate all of them first and then decide which one he should focus on. Linxian ends up agreeing with him, but asks him not to fool around and waste his talent. She says that she just remembered that the school where he studies will soon have monthly exams. The protagonist says yes and asks why she is concerned about that matter. She explains that recently the friction on the battlefield of all heaven has intensified, and a great war between the 10,000 races and humanity could break out at any moment. Therefore, all countries invested vast resources to establish training fields and gymnasiums, and she would like to recommend that he practice there. As long as he takes 1st place in his school's monthly exam, she can give a recommendation. After receiving all that information, the protagonist becomes a little lost. He thinks that in that great war among all races, a decade ago, he had lost his entire family except for his uncle. He accepts without hesitation and says that he will work hard to fight in the war. He remembers everything he went through and his new family, his uncle and aunt, who have now become his parents. He promises to himself and to them that he will never let a tragedy happen again. Because of that, he must become the strongest and protect everyone around him. A short time later, back at his uncle and aunt's house, he shows them his identification, saying that he has officially become a cultivator. His uncle takes the identification from his hand and trembling cries, saying that Hong finally made it and that this is wonderful. His aunt says that he has grown up and is now very capable. Hong explains that a 1st stage cultivator receives a salary of 10,000 per month, so his uncle will no longer have to work so hard. His uncle agrees, saying that now the protagonist is the pillar of that family, and because of that, he will listen to everything he says. Hong takes a deep breath, thinking that his uncle and aunt should no longer worry about anything, because from that moment on, he will be the person who supports and protects that family. Late at night, he was once again on the rooftop of his house cultivating. As soon as he manages to absorb a little attribute energy, he tries to do the same thing the president did, but only a spark comes out of his hand. He asks whether that can be considered an introduction to the guiding art. However, he does not know why it has no power at all. He takes a look at the system panel and realizes that a guiding art section has appeared on the panel, which means that he really did learn at least the basics. He notices that the guiding art is at level 1 and is surprised to discover that it has more levels since the president had not mentioned that kind of thing. If that guiding art had levels, she probably would have mentioned it, which makes him think that maybe that guiding art is something only he can use. However, he was wondering how to increase the guiding arts and whether it would be possible to use martial arts points to increase them as well. But when he tries to use his martial arts points, the system warns that his martial arts points are insufficient. He thinks it is better to forget about that for now and cultivate all 7 guiding arts, then figure out how to gain more martial arts points. He focuses again and resumes cultivating. Several hours later, the lightning, water, earth, and spirit attributes were at level 1. However, the protagonist was feeling that the spiritual energies of the 7 different attributes were repelling each other. Because of that, it is no wonder the president had said that the genius who cultivated the 7 guiding arts remained a first-stage cultivator even after decades. In addition, although all 7 spiritual energies exist inside his body, he can only use one attribute at a time. If he forcefully uses a second attribute, the 2 attributes instantly repel each other and eventually disappear. The properties of lightning and fire are quite similar, so perhaps they can be fused. However, the combination explodes again. The protagonist keeps trying, spending the entire night at it. Completely out of breath and with his hand trembling, he keeps trying to merge the attributes. And finally, he succeeds, even after trying for the entire night. And now it is time to go out and test his new power. He returns to the martial arts square and says that now they specifically changed to a 3rd-stage combat energy detector, so he will not be able to break it. He thinks that last time, 50% of his strength gave a total of 3,000 combat power, and this time he will try only 30%. But he is impressed to see that the score surpassed 2,300, reaching 2,343. 30% of his strength should be around 1,800 points, but it actually increased by 500. And even a single lightning power is extremely strong. Now he wants to test lightning fused with fire. The machine records 3,041. He says that relying purely on physical strength and the fusion of lightning with fire, 30% of his strength already surpasses a high-level first-stage cultivator, and his vital energy is only 123 points, and that is something terrifying. On top of that, all of that happened with only 2 fused attributes, so he wonders what might happen if he manages to fuse all 7 attributes at the same time. He thinks that he needs to return to the rooftop and try to fuse 3 attributes at once. A long time later, he was sprawled out on the rooftop, questioning how much the difficulty increases when trying to fuse 3 attributes at the same time, because he arranged and combined the 7 attributes many times, but made no progress at all. And perhaps increasing the level of the guiding arts might help him fuse them successfully. He remembers that the next day is already the monthly exam, and that he should try to gain as many martial arts points as possible. The next day at school, Principal Chung-shan tells the students that this is the monthly exam, but it will be a little different from before. Since the situation on the front line is tense, the training camps will be held annually, starting that day to select geniuses and cultivate them intensively. The training camp has abundant resources, not only a large number of martial arts and elixirs, but also great masters serving as instructors. The top 3 students in that exam will be able to participate in the training camp organized by the city. All the students become excited about this opportunity. But the protagonist, who is exhausted from so much training, asks what the president meant by saying he had to place first to earn the slot, because apparently the top 3 places will already receive that slot. The protagonist's friend says that Chen Shan and Li Tu became first-stage cultivators, and some people started using Furious Thunderfist, so they are out of luck. Hong says that it has only been 10 days since he stopped going to school, and those guys already managed to become cultivators. His friend says that in recent days, the principal has been calling veteran Chen Tian to teach Furious Thunderfist to the talented individuals. Li Tu and Chen Shan's vital energy already surpassed 100 a few days ago, and they can even unleash 3 strikes with Thunderfist. Chen Shan says that this time he will tell everyone who the true #1 genius is, but Li Tu laughs, saying that when he wins, he hopes his friend can still remain confident. Chen Tian asks the principal whether he still has not managed to find that genius boy who unleashed 9 strikes of Thunderfist. The principal says that after all these days, he searched everywhere, so he truly thinks that that student does not belong to his school. Jiang Ming appears with his 2 disciples, asking the principal why he is so surprised, as if his wife ran away. Chung Shan asks what he is doing there at the school. Jiang Ming explains that apparently the quality of his students is not very good that year. Therefore, he brought 2 of his disciples to the monthly exam and says that they could participate. Chung Shan thinks that that man is clearly there to try to humiliate him. However, if he does not agree with what that man is saying, it would be admitting that there is not a single talented person in his entire school who can stand out. Jiang Ming says that of course the quality of the students at that school does not seem to be very good, so he can understand if the principal says he does not want to do that. Chen Tian says that they are deliberately looking for trouble. Lion tells his master that this idea is very bad because that boy named Hong is right there. Jiangming looks to the side and sees that monster standing among the students and is shocked, realizing that that boy really is from the first school. And that is not good at all because if his two disciples run into that boy, they definitely will not be able to win. Instead, they will be completely humiliated, so he needs to do something. Jiang Ming tells the principal that he hopes he will not get angry because he was only joking and there is no need to compare, because how could his two useless disciples compare to the students of that great school? The two disciples promptly agree with everything their master was saying, but Chen Tian and the principal were furious about that, thinking that those guys are mocking the situation. The protagonist's battle against Chen Peng is announced. His friend says that Hong got a near Cultivator as his first opponent, and that is very unlucky. The protagonist's teacher tells him to try to fight, but not to push himself too hard because if he gets hurt, it will not be worth it. Chen Peng says that Hong is almost falling over on his own and says that he might have to knock him down, but in 1 second, the protagonist disappears and with just one strike, slams his opponent to the ground as if it were absolutely nothing. Both his teacher and his friend are impressed by that, wondering when he became so strong since he instantly eliminated a near Cultivator. Hong continues winning his matches with astonishing ease. People ask if it is possible that he is a first-stage Cultivator. Chen Tian asks where that boy came from and why he did not see that young man when he was giving special classes. The school principal laments, saying that all of this is because of his neglect of duty, because he failed to notice such great potential. And if he had not focused on cultivating him earlier, all that talent would have been buried because of him. Chen Tian keeps thinking about it, saying that he has seen that boy somewhere before but cannot remember where. The principal says that the semifinal between Li Tu and Chen Shan should be decided soon and the strengths of the two are very similar, so it is hard to say who will win. Li Tu tells Chen Shan that both of them have furious thunderfist and that if he does not use his final move then he will not win that battle. The two continue clashing their blows and Chen Shan uses his firepower, telling his opponent to watch closely because he is the best in the whole school. People are impressed to see that this is attribute manifestation, and apparently he can already do that. In addition, that is the fire attribute, incredibly powerful, second only to lightning. Li Tu also releases his attribute saying that it is only attribute manifestation and asking who cannot do that. People cannot believe it. The two continue advancing, but Li Tu manages to gain the upper hand. The principal says that that boy had been hiding his strength. Chen Tian points out that in a little over 10 days, he not only mastered attribute manifestation but also refined his thunderfist and his talent is very good. The principal says there is no need to watch the final because with thunderfist and attribute manifestation, there is no way the protagonist can defeat Li Tu. Jiang Ming walks over to the two of them and says that he bets 50,000 that the protagonist can take first place. The principal asks whether he has gone mad and explains that although the protagonist is very good, he does not know guiding arts, so how can he win that fight? Chen Tian says that he will accept the bet since Jiang Ming wants to give away money. The grand final is about to begin, and Li Tu says that the protagonist is very lucky not to have run into him or Chen Shan earlier, otherwise he would not even have reached the final. Hong only smiles, thinking that after hunting beasts, he always felt that those students were very weak, but now he has finally found someone worth playing with a little. Li Tu says that since the protagonist reached the final, then he can consider himself the second best in the school. Hong asks who is first, and Li Tu advances, saying that naturally it will be him, because with just one move, he can show how great the distance between them is. People are surprised to see that Li Tu is attacking with the 5-strike Furious Thunderfist, so there is no way the protagonist can defend against it. Hong simply releases his attributes and using only his speed and physical strength begins to counterattack, thinking that he just wants to see the limits of his physical body. People cannot believe it, asking if the protagonist has gone crazy because he did not dodge and tried to confront it head-on. They ask the referee to intervene before something worse happens. However, with only his speed and physical strength, the protagonist manages to block all 5 of Li Tu's strikes, leaving him shocked. The two continue exchanging blows, but Li Tu begins to feel the pressure, asking if the protagonist is a monster, because each of his punches is very heavy. The protagonist's teacher says that he did not use any martial art and still is evenly matched with Li Tu, who is using the 5-strike Furious Thunderfist. His friend says that the strength he is showing is terrifying. Chen Tian points out that that boy must have some kind of special physique, otherwise his strength would not be that exaggerated. The principal is happy, saying that his school truly produced a genius with a special physique. Chen Tian takes a deep breath, saying that although the protagonist's strength is surprising, his opponent has already managed to condense attributes, so there is no way he can have the advantage. Litu is pushed back and releases his attributes, saying that the protagonist should not be so arrogant because the winner there is him. With his attributes released, he charges forward with everything he has. Hong thinks that originally he only wanted to see how far his physique could go against that guy. However, he could not hold back and completely released his power too quickly. He thinks that if his opponent is giving everything he has, then he should show some respect. He also begins to release his attribute, and Litu cannot believe that he is manifesting the lightning attribute. Both the principal and Chen Tian cannot believe that he released the lightning attribute. And now, with a special physique combined with the most powerful lightning attribute, his talent is terrifying. Litu uses the 5-strike thunderfist together with his metal attribute. However, it does not have any effect at all. He thinks that the protagonist's lightning attribute is much stronger than his metal attribute. Hong smiles and tells his opponent that he has already shown his finishing move and now it is his turn to show what he can do. He begins to attack and Litu is sent flying away, asking how it is possible for him to perform Furious Thunderfist with 9 strikes. Litu falls to the ground defeated, and everyone remains silent for a full minute. After that, all of them start shouting, asking whether that is really possible, how the protagonist managed to win using the 9-strike Furious Thunderfist, which shows that it is the perfect realm. Chen Tian is shocked and says that this move is the same 9-strike move that Genius used on the day he disappeared from the school. The principal says that the protagonist is not just a genius, but a dragon of that school. Chen Tian asks how much those talented individuals with prominent backgrounds will suffer if a monster like the protagonist goes to the training camp. People say that a golden scale is not meant for a pond, and when it meets wind and clouds, it transforms into a dragon. And apparently that school is only a small puddle for Hong's monstrous strength. The principal says that in that training camp, the protagonist will surely rise like a hidden dragon from his abyss into the sky, and the demonic capital, the imperial capital, and even the battlefield are the places where a monster like that should shine. At the end of the day, he returns to his house, and his uncle asks how he did on the exam. Hong laughs and says that he came in first place. His uncle is impressed and asks if that means he can go to the training camp he had mentioned before. Hong says yes, but suddenly someone knocks on the door. The protagonist answers it, and a woman says that he must be Hong. She explains that she is the mother of Lin Nian from the same school the protagonist attends. She explains that the top 3 finishers in the school's monthly exam can go to the training camp, and her son came in 4th place, so she would like to talk to the protagonist about giving up his spot in the training camp. She offers him 30,000 to give up the spot and stop going to the training camp. The 3 of them look at her, and the woman gets irritated, asking what kind of attitude that is. Because that training camp was established to cultivate geniuses who can fight on the battlefield of heaven in the future. The competition is extremely brutal and people can end up dying there. Everyone inside can eat high-quality elixirs until they are sick of them and can practice high-level martial arts as much as they want. With the protagonist's family's financial situation, giving up early would be for his own good. The protagonist's aunt becomes worried and asks him if that woman is telling the truth, if it is really that dangerous. His uncle asks her to calm down and asks the protagonist if he can guarantee his own safety. Hong answers yes without thinking twice, and the woman asks whether he's really going to believe the guarantee of a child. The protagonist's uncle steps forward and says yes, because the decision to go to the training camp is entirely his, because he has grown up, and because of that has earned the trust of his own family and must keep his promise. On top of that, if he does not trust his own family, how should he trust a completely strange woman who just knocked on his door? His uncle slams the door in the woman's face and tells her to leave immediately before things go beyond just words. The woman gets a little upset, saying that they are very stubborn, and now they just need to wait for that boy to be eliminated from the training camp. Inside the house, the protagonist explains to his uncle and aunt that he did not want to talk about the dangers, but his uncle interrupts him, saying that it is fine because he is a somewhat rough man. On the other hand, the protagonist is more polite and understands that training camp better than anyone else in that house. So if he is saying that he is ready to face the hardships, they should simply believe him and support his decision. His aunt slaps her husband, asking what kind of talk that is. She tells the protagonist that they are not asking for any special ranking because she only wants him to make sure he stays safe. He smiles and says that he will do his best to do that. During the night, on his rooftop, he thinks that although his uncle and aunt are supporting him, they are probably still worried about his safety. Because of that, he absolutely cannot disappoint them, and in order to preserve the life he fought so hard to build, he must become the strongest in that place. He had more than 10 matches in the monthly exam and earned a total of 285 martial arts points. And that is still not enough for him, since he has no idea what kind of advanced martial arts and trump cards the geniuses at the training camp possess. He increases his mortal body again, saying that in order to face them, he must prioritize improving his physical combat power. Because of the advancement of his body and his strength, he becomes exhausted again, saying that he still has 35.4 left and is far from reaching 100%. In addition, he would really like to know what kind of special body the mortal body will transform into afterward. But while looking at the panel, he is surprised, asking when the lightning and celestial flame guiding arts reached level 2. He thinks that he cultivated guiding arts for only a few days and did nothing beyond that, and wonders if it is possible that they are leveling up through normal cultivation of the guiding arts, without any extra conditions. Because if that is the case, he will try to level them up again. The next day, at dawn, the protagonist was still cultivating and managed to bring his lightning and celestial flame to level 3. Not only did the guiding arts level up, but his vitality also increased by 3 points. He says goodbye to his uncle and his aunt tells him to be careful, and if it becomes too dangerous, he must come back immediately. But his uncle tells her not to say such discouraging things and tells him to go to the training camp and come back home with another first place. As soon as he leaves, his uncle is trembling. His aunt looks at that and says that he was acting tough, but he is just as worried as she is. While walking down the street, he hears a noise and Lingxian stops beside him and tells him to get in the car. While they were inside the car, Hong asks the president why she needs him. She says that she needs to warn him about a few things regarding the training camp. As president of the Martial Arts Association, she knows some information about them. As far as she knows, among those cultivators, there are some monsters who are already high-level first-stage cultivators. On top of that, they are not far from becoming second-stage cultivators. So some of those monsters and the martial arts they master are at least B rank. Hong thinks that second-stage cultivators require 200 points of vital energy. He wonders whether people of that generation really exist who are already not far from becoming second-stage cultivators. However, he is not afraid at all of B-rank martial arts. With the system space, he can quickly learn even B-rank martial arts. The president tells the protagonist that, in fact, the talent he possesses is the strongest she has ever seen, and it is incomparable. However, he does not have the same amount of resources as those people. Therefore, even if he suffers at the beginning, he does not need to worry, because with his talent, he will surpass them all, and that is inevitable. Hong says that he understands and thanks her for her concern and warnings. Lingxian is surprised and thinks that even knowing that his vital energy and martial arts are inferior to the others, the protagonist still remains very calm, which means she does not need to worry about his mentality. In the Tianlin mountain range, the van was taking the 3 winners to the training camp. Both Li Tu and Chen Shan are frightened, asking whether the training camp is in the Tianlin mountain range, which is filled with beasts. The principal tells them not to worry so much, because the training camp has a great master supervising it, so normally there is no danger to their lives. Hong thinks that the Tianlin mountain range is a huge mountain chain that stretches through several cities, such as Xingcheng and Yangcheng. Not only is spiritual energy abundant and beasts numerous there, but there are even beast kings, comparable to great masters of the 7th stage. The competition among the beasts there is extremely brutal. Even first-stage beasts on the outer perimeter of the mountain range are much fiercer than the beasts in other places. Ordinary second-stage cultivators would not dare set foot there so easily. As the car moves forward, the monsters were only observing their every move. Li Tu says that he feels like something is watching them, and Chen Shan asks if it is possible that there could be a surprise beast attack. On the other hand, the protagonist was calm, thinking that the competition in the training camp will probably be as brutal as the fighting among the beasts. Because of that, he must be a little crazy, and in fact, he's starting to like that feeling. A short time later, they arrive at the training camp, and Li Tu asks how those people can be like that as soon as they arrive, since everyone else is looking at the 3 of them. Li Tu and Chen Shan feel a little uncomfortable, but the protagonist keeps smiling and tells them to hurry up and walk. A person approaches them and says that they will wait for everyone to arrive there before starting the entrance assessment. The protagonist is surprised, asking if there really is still an assessment. But suddenly, everyone starts shouting that they are here, and other people complain that this should not be anything special because no one cares if they are from great families. As soon as the 3 people step down, some people are impressed, saying that the goddess Xiao Yan is very cool and beautiful, and having mental mages is truly enviable. In addition, they comment that Lin Xinghe from the Lin family is almost at the 2nd stage. The city lord's son, the barbarian god king Diantuo, is also there, and not only does his fire attribute compatibility reach 95%, but he also has a special physique. The 3 walk in and look like celebrities. The protagonist looks at them and thinks that those 3 are leading the top geniuses of Xingcheng that the president had mentioned, and now he wants to know just how genius they really are. The evaluator says that now everyone has arrived and he will announce the rules for the assessment. The training camp is located in the Tianlin mountain range, 30 kilometers away from that base camp. They place some tokens inside certain beasts, and they will only be able to enter the training camp with that token. Chen Shan tells Li Tu that walking 30 kilometers in 8 hours seems easy, but that mountain range is very dangerous. As soon as they go deeper into the mountains, they do not know what kind of beasts they will encounter, putting their lives at risk. Hong asks if he needs to arrive within 8 hours because that is very simple, so he will have plenty of time to hunt the beasts around him and gain more martial arts points. One of the people asks what will happen if they encounter some high-level beast they cannot face. The evaluator says that in that case, they simply will not be very lucky and will be eliminated. However, someone will appear to save their lives. Everyone gets irritated, saying that this is not fair because it is very possible that the strong will be eliminated simply for being unlucky, while the weak will end up passing. The evaluator tells everyone to be quiet and says that this world is not a child's game. They cultivated meticulously for more than a decade, only to be crushed by a strong cultivator who happened to pass by the moment they reached the battlefield, and he asks whether they will still continue protesting about fairness. Because if they do not want to encounter high-level beasts, they need to act cautiously, avoid risks, because the strong intimidate the weak and form groups against fewer opponents. Those are the rules of the battlefield. One person says that it is exactly like that because those who fear death should quit early to save time. The people who are always afraid of everything are a bunch of useless cowards. The person beside him becomes completely furious, telling him to repeat that immediately. The man says that he is just a useless coward and that, if he is not convinced, the two of them can simply fight and see who will come out worse. The evaluator points out that fighting inside the camp is forbidden, but as soon as they enter the mountain range, they will not interfere with anything, whether it is to steal the tokens or simply because someone wants to beat another person up because they do not like them. They can do whatever they want. The two competitors only stare at each other, and the protagonist thinks that the training camp is truly brutal, and that helps. The evaluators encourage competition among them, and according to the rules, he estimates that more than half of the people there will be eliminated before even reaching the main destination. But while thinking about that, he remembers a point that might be relevant, because if he beats up those people who are competing against him, then he might also gain martial arts points. The evaluator says that they need to stop talking nonsense because the assessment is starting now and orders everyone to leave immediately. Already inside the wilderness in the mountain range, the two students who had tried to fight earlier run into each other again. One of them tells the other to come back and see who will end up worse off. They prepare to attack each other and clash with their blows. An exchange of punches begins between the two, and Hong simply watches the situation, thinking that originally he wanted to take advantage of that opportunity to see the combat power of those so-called geniuses. But if that is all they are showing, then they basically mean nothing. And even if the protagonist intervenes to defeat them, he probably will not gain many martial arts points because they are too weak. So he should hurry up and hunt more high-level beasts. That way, he will be able to earn greater rewards. He gets ready to leave, and the two continue fighting, cursing and insulting each other. The protagonist stops and his body starts trembling. He looks back with a smile, saying that apparently he cannot give up those martial arts points that are practically being handed to him. He tells the two of them to stop fighting each other and asks if they would like to join forces to try to face him. The two look at him, and one of them says that the protagonist is just another nobody and tells him to be careful before he ends up getting beaten too. The other asks what level he is and how he dares interrupt the fight. Hong says that apparently they misunderstood something and points out that he did not tell them to stop fighting, but rather to stop fighting each other and join forces to fight him. That makes both of them angry, and one of them charges at the protagonist, asking how he dares look down on them like that. But in just 1 second and with one strike, the protagonist sends the boy flying far away, knocking him out with ease. The other young man is shocked, wondering how that is possible because the guy who was defeated with just one strike has strength similar to his own. Hong begins moving quickly and the other boy becomes frightened. The protagonist advances, saying that now it is his turn, and he also defeats the boy with a single move. The protagonist looks at the two of them, saying that this is what they get for looking down on ordinary cultivators. Meanwhile, at the control center, two people were watching that scene. One of them asked where that guy came from, because two people were having an intense duel, and he simply appeared and instantly eliminated both of them. The other asks if those two who were knocked down can be considered eliminated. The evaluator says not yet because they did not actively request rescue, so the assessment continues. A short time later, one of the young men who was defeated by the protagonist wakes up, saying that his face still hurts a lot and remembers what happened, saying that he has never been so humiliated in his entire life and that he will take revenge. The other boy also wakes up, saying that if he had not underestimated the protagonist, then maybe he would not have lost that way. The two look at each other and one apologizes to the other, asking him not to take the words seriously. The two join forces, saying that they need to get revenge on the protagonist. Meanwhile, Hong was acting like a true predator, roaming all over the place and hunting his next prey. He notices something and sees several first-stage early-level giant tusk boars, and apparently the beasts in the mountain range are truly numerous. The boars notice the protagonist's presence and charge at him, but Hong uses his lightning attribute and moves like a bolt of lightning, eliminating all the monsters in front of him. However, he is not very satisfied with that, thinking that he used to gain dozens of martial arts points just by defeating a single cultivator. But ever since he leveled up and became stronger, the rewards in martial arts points have been getting smaller and smaller, receiving 10, 7, or even 6 points for each elimination. But he thinks that does not matter right now because he needs to hurry and find his token soon. He starts clearing away all the monsters he had defeated because there were about a dozen first-stage early-level beasts, and perhaps he might find his token. However, after searching, he takes a deep breath, saying that apparently it is not there either, and perhaps only higher-level beasts have the tokens inside their bodies. Half an hour later, he continues moving forward and thinks that when he first entered the forest, within a radius of 3 to 5 kilometers, he managed to find a dozen low-level beasts. But now he cannot find anything. Suddenly, a tiger leaps at him, and he becomes happy, saying that he finally found a high-level first-stage Phantom Knight Black Tiger. He uses Void-Destroying Finger, causing massive damage to the Black Tiger. The tiger is basically dead on the ground, and he takes the chance to finish off his prey. Because of that, he manages to gain 35 martial arts points. He realizes that with his current strength, eliminating a high-level first-stage beast is as easy as cutting a strawberry pie. He opens up the tiger's body, saying that perhaps that high-level black tiger might have the token for him. He finally manages to find it, saying that it was inside the stomach of a high-level beast. But because of that, it took him almost 3 hours to find it. Since he had found first-stage early-level boars everywhere, and then only found one high-level black tiger after half an hour, that means that the deeper one goes into the mountain range, the higher the beast rank becomes. But the fewer beasts will be found. Although a high-level first-stage black tiger gives more martial arts points, he only found one in half an hour. And if he hunts the low-level beasts on the outskirts of the mountain range, he can gain more martial arts points than by eliminating 1 or 2 high-level ones. In other words, instead of seeking quality, it is better to simply pile up points through quantity. In addition, there are still 5 hours left in the assessment, and because of that, he needs to accumulate enough martial arts points to maximize his progress in the mortal body. A short time later, the forest was turning into a horror movie scene. All the monsters were being eliminated, and the protagonist was responsible for it. While eliminating a boar, a bear appears trying to attack him, but the protagonist notices its presence and dodges the attack. He gets ready to counterattack and says that after fighting dozens of first-stage beasts, he finally found another mid-level first-stage beast. With one punch, he sends the bear flying away and finishes it off as if it were nothing. He thinks that after his mortal body reached 60%, he can eliminate mid-level first-stage beasts with just his physical strength, and he has already gained a total of 254 martial arts points. He needs a little more than 100 points to maximize his progress in the mortal body, and there are still more than 3 hours left, and he must gather enough points by then. Suddenly, an extremely fierce roar echoes throughout the forest. The protagonist is surprised and asks what that sound is. A huge bird appears flying in his direction. He asks if that could be the legendary Beast King, the Golden Rock. The bird keeps roaring fiercely, and the protagonist is shocked by the Beast King's power, because just one flap of its wings causes a terrible impact. The trees were being destroyed, and the protagonist hides near some rocks, wondering what kind of terrifying strength that is. He thinks that recently he has become much stronger over time. However, in front of that great existence, he is only an ant. However, he notices another terrifying presence and asks what kind of light that is. A man was standing before the Beast King. His name is Qin Tianli, a 7th stage Grandmaster. He asked the Beast King what it is doing there, because he had already said that he was borrowing that territory. The Beast King prepares to attack, saying that it never said it would lend that territory. The Grandmaster says that if that is the case, then he will beat the Beast King down until it agrees. The battle between the two begins, and Tianli charges fiercely, landing several consecutive strikes on the Beast King. He stops attacking and tells the Beast King to leave immediately because he already said that he was borrowing that territory. The giant bird begins to retreat, saying that it will take revenge soon. With the situation under control, Tianli releases his power as if he were a god and introduces himself to everyone, saying that he is the 7th stage Grandmaster named Qin Tianli. He tells all the students not to panic because the situation is under control and the assessment will continue. Hong is impressed, asking if that really is the power of a 7th stage human martial artist. However, he declares that sooner or later he will reach that realm. Tianli returns to the camp and says that great golden-winged beast king likes to cause trouble, because he only wanted to use the territory as a training ground. It could have agreed right away, but it had to make a dispute out of it. Baimu says that this was already to be expected from Grandmaster Tianli, who is even stronger than the rumors say. She is a 5th stage martial artist. Linz, also a 5th stage martial artist, says that even the Beast King, who is known for having a powerful physique, was defeated so easily. Tianli tells them to stop flattering him and calls the two of them to go to the monitoring room to see who managed to survive the great pressure of the Golden Wings. As soon as they arrive in the monitoring room, Lin says that most of the students could not move under the Beast King's tremendous pressure. Tianli sees one of the students saying that after he managed to eliminate a group of black tigers, he still endured the pressure with ease. He asks what that boy's name is. Baimu says that his name is Tian Tuo, high-level 1st stage, with 340 vitality points and 95% compatibility with the fire attribute. In addition, he possesses a special physique, the Savage God Body, with limitless strength, and he is the son of the Lord of Star City. Tianli is surprised because the Lord of Star City had said that having children was like a lottery and that he had already had more than 100 children, but apparently this time he finally got a decent one. He looks at the other boy, saying that he managed to escape the range of the pressure, and that is very good footwork. Baimu says that he is Xinghe, high-level 1st stage, with 325 vitality points and 96% compatibility with the Wind attribute. He came from the Lin family of Star City. The Grandmaster looks at a girl and asks if she is a seer, because being able to use mental power to neutralize the Beast King's pressure is very good. Baimu introduces her, saying that her name is Yan, a medium-level 1st stage psychic with 290 vitality points and 95% compatibility with the Wood attribute, a descendant of the Xiao family of Star City. Tianli says that those three were all completely at ease under the Beast King's pressure, showing that their strength far surpasses that of their peers. He asks if there are other talented individuals. Baimu mentions a few more names and points out that there are about a dozen individuals who, above all, have medium-level 1st stage strength and did not lose consciousness under the great pressure. Tianli asks why all of them are disciples from important families, and asks about the students from the other schools, especially the 1st high school. She says that the students from all the schools are at the low level of the 1st stage. The 3 students from the 1st high school only recently managed to advance, and they are… Tianli interrupts her, saying that it does not matter, because he is no longer going to look at that school because it does not seem worthy of its reputation. Linz is startled and shouts for them to wait, asking what is wrong with that person. The protagonist was eliminating the beasts around him as if they were nothing. All 3 of them are impressed, because he just faced the Beast King's pressure and still has the strength to hunt beasts. Baimu says that he is from the 1st high school and is a true monster. Linz picks up the protagonist's notes and tells her to stop being so dramatic in front of the Grandmaster. But as soon as he looks, he becomes the same way, saying that he is a monster. Tianli tells the two of them to stop acting like that because they are in the 5th stage, so what kind of genius have they not seen yet? In addition, they are young, so their temperament is not very stable. But as soon as the Grandmaster looks at the statistics, he is also surprised, asking whether the protagonist is still human, because he has 100% compatibility with all attributes, a special physique. He questions whether such a monster really exists in that world. In addition, he notices that his combat strength exceeded 3,000 points, and all of his techniques are at the perfect level. Tianli, and his energy begins to pour out of his body, says that the protagonist is a prodigy. How could he come from a god-forsaken place like Star City? A monster like him is seen once every 1,000 years. Tianli crushes the paper, saying that this time he hit the jackpot. However, he notices something a little strange and asks how Hong is only at the low level of the 1st stage, because his vitality is only 123, and with talent as great as his, that should not be right. Baimu explains that the protagonist is cultivating all 7 guiding arts simultaneously. The Grandmaster becomes completely furious, saying that now it is explained why his vitality is so low. Cultivating all 7 simultaneously, even an immortal would be doomed. So how could his cultivation advance like that? And apparently, the president of the Martial Arts Association of Star City, named Linxian, did not even explain to that child what would happen. One of the subordinates enters the monitoring room and says that the students are gradually arriving at the training camp. Tianli says that this is very good and that he will go take a look. Yan, Xinghe, and Tiantuo were the first to arrive, and the Grandmaster says that they did very well. 6 hours after the start of the assessment, most of the students begin arriving relieved, because they thought they were going to die when the Beast King appeared. 7.5 hours after the start of the assessment, basically everyone had already arrived, but the Grandmaster kept watching, asking where that monster named Hong is and why he still has not arrived, asking if it is possible that he got lost, because he cannot let something so precious escape from his hands. Suddenly, the protagonist emerges from the middle of the forest, and the Grandmaster is relieved, saying that he finally arrived. The protagonist thinks that he ended up doing all of that because he was so busy gaining martial arts points that he almost forgot the time. He approaches everyone completely covered in blood and the remains of some monsters. The people are impressed, asking how many beasts he had to eliminate to become so filthy like that. The two young men who had been beaten by the protagonist wanted to get even, but one of them says that it is better to wait for a perfect moment. When they are on the battlefield, that will be better. Yan looks at the protagonist and says that this is very interesting. Xinghe also laughs, saying that he arrived right on time, which shows that he is also an expert. Lin says that 8 hours have already passed, and whoever still has not arrived is eliminated, and next he will present the facilities and rules of the training camp. There are several important facilities in the training camp: the gravity training room, the movement technique training room, and even the beast combat room. In addition, there is the martial skills pavilion. In the martial skills pavilion, they can exchange for martial arts, movement techniques, and weapons, with the highest grade reaching A rank. Hong thinks that going to that training camp was the right choice. Linz points out that in order for them to use the resources above, they need to provide enough contribution points. And there is only one way to gain contribution points. They need to stand out in various training disciplines. Excellent performance will also receive additional rewards. He points out that it is already getting late and whoever can still train after the first assessment may go. Meanwhile, the injured students need to go with him to the dormitory to rest, because he cannot let them die under his supervision. Hong goes to his room and is happy to see that the room is private, because now he will not have to worry about people watching him when he cultivates and levels up. He goes to his bed, thinking that he had been waiting for this moment because he gained a total of 354 martial arts points, and now he can maximize his mortal body. He begins evolving the mortal body, reaching 100% and activating the evolution. A strong, dense energy begins to flow from his body, and the pressure in his room changes drastically. He concentrates as much as possible to contain his evolution, until he finally manages to adapt his body. He takes a deep breath, saying that just the explosive power of his physical body already tempts power. The system updates and appears, saying that the strongest physique is the Overlord body. The protagonist thinks that he has never heard of it. The system points out that the spiritual level Overlord body is the strongest existence among all physiques in the world. Hong notices that the Overlord's spiritual level is at 0%, which means that it can still be upgraded, and asks what kind of heaven-defying physique it will evolve into. He grabs his things, saying that this special physique is truly incredible, so he needs to test how powerful the Overlord is. But when he picks up his spear, he notices that it has been dented. He's surprised, because that is a C-rank weapon, and it was almost bent in half just from his casual grip. He becomes upset because those long spears are very expensive, and he spent a lot of money to buy that thing. However, he remembers that perhaps he picked up that spear in the wilderness, so he did not spend any money at all. But now the most important thing is to gather enough contribution points as quickly as possible to exchange for some A-rank alloy long spear. He thinks that he can gain contribution points just by using a heavy vest, but what he really wants to know is how many hundreds of kilograms he can endure at the same time. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, people were gathered together in amazement because Tiantuo was wearing a vest weighing 3,000 kilograms and saying that it still felt a little light since he could still jump. After all, the normal load for a first-stage martial artist is only a few hundred kilograms. Yan says that Tiantuo's strength is as monstrous as an ox's. Meanwhile, in the monitoring chamber, Baimu says that Tiantuo can easily carry 3,000 kilograms, and that was already expected from the savage god body. But Baimu was worried about the protagonist and asked the Grandmaster when they are going to talk to him about cultivating 7 guiding arts simultaneously. Tianli says that unfortunately they cannot be so direct because geniuses are proud, so if they tell him directly, it could backfire. Therefore, they need to use some methods to make him understand the reason and voluntarily give up on his own. He asks whether the martial artists for the organized night attack are all assembled yet. Lin says that it will still take some time to balance the combat power of the different students because organizing the group is a bit troublesome. On top of that, those students just finished the entrance assessment, and their mindset is probably very relaxed. So if they are attacked repeatedly at night, they will definitely cry. Tianli tells him to arrange a high-level first-stage martial artist for Hong because He wants the protagonist to be completely crushed. After that, he will explain the disadvantages of cultivating 7 guiding arts simultaneously, and he will certainly listen and give up. Linz becomes worried, saying that a high-level first-stage martial artist vitality exceeds 400 points, and the combat power is 5,000 points. The protagonist's vitality is only a little over 100. Baimu asks whether that would not be too bad, because if it breaks his martial Dao heart, that could cause problems. Tianli asks what the two of them are talking about and points out that he is only trying to correct the mistake the protagonist is making. And if his martial Dao heart breaks so easily, that means he is worthless. A group of people was following Tiantuo to watch him go into the gravity training room, but the protagonist ignores that, saying that everyone went to watch that and that he will go take a look at the room later. He picks up the smart bracelet used to calculate points and looks at the vests, asking if the heaviest one could weigh 10 tons and whether it is made of super heavy alloy, wondering who could even wear that. He holds the 10-ton vest in his hands and realizes that it is very heavy. Even if he can use it, his speed will be severely affected, and he will not last very long. He decides to test 5 tons and manages to move easily. He points out that apparently 5 tons is the most suitable for him at the moment. He asks what weight those 3 chose because they are high-level first-stage cultivators, so they should be similar to the protagonist and perhaps even a little stronger. He thinks that perhaps he should observe that guy's training methods, because he hopes to learn something from them. Everyone was gathered, saying that Tiantuo is not human because he entered the gravity room without even taking off the vest weighing 3 tons, and he even set the gravity to twice normal, and that is outrageous. But the protagonist is disappointed to see that his weighted vest weighs only 3 tons, and that is very light, and apparently he had a small misunderstanding about the Overlord's strength. Hong goes over to his 2 friends and asks if something is wrong and whether they are not going into the gravity room to train. The 2 say that all the people there are even stronger than before, so they are far inferior, and if they go in there, they will probably be ridiculed. Hong pats them on the shoulder and says that it is fine. He walks to the room and his friends cannot believe it. Everyone else asks if that guy is some kind of idiot because he is probably not even wearing a weighted suit right now and perhaps wants to surpass Tiantuo in the gravity multiplier. As soon as the protagonist enters, he thinks that gravity rooms are extremely expensive and only powerful families can buy them. Ordinary martial artists cannot even access them, so he cannot waste this opportunity. He thinks that using a vest weighing 5 tons, double gravity would be 10 tons, and he can only last about 10 minutes with that. So it is better to set it to 1.5 times. That way he can last a little longer. But even with just that, he already feels an extremely heavy weight pulling his body downward. Outside, everyone else says that the protagonist is not even wearing a weight and still set the gravity lower than Tiantuo's. And he is probably just a weak, ordinary guy, and that is hilarious. However, the protagonist did not care at all about what the others were saying. He simply sits on the floor and starts to concentrate because that was already expected of a gravity room. The difficulty of cultivating guiding arts under that pressure is much greater. However, the speed of cultivation clearly increased a lot. 2 hours later, he was already exhausted and breathing heavily. He looks at the system panel and thinks that, except for the lightning and celestial flame guiding arts, all the other guiding arts increased by 1 level, and his vitality also rose to 130. He goes to the panel and turns off the gravity, thinking that the gravity room really works very well, which means that the movement technique room and the beast room probably will not be bad either. He finally walks out of the room saying that he is exhausted. Outside, 2 people were mocking him, saying that the last place guy came out very quickly, and he's probably not even wearing a weighted suit and could not handle only 1.5 times gravity, and he is still drenched in sweat. And if it were them, they could sleep through the entire night in the gravity room. The protagonist was very hot and sweaty. He takes off his jacket, revealing the weighted vest on his body, saying that the ventilation of that weighted suit is very poor and he is burning up. The 2 are surprised to see that he really was wearing a weighted vest. However, they say that guy is in last place and probably even 500 kilograms is enough to make him suffer. But he managed to stay in the gravity room for 2 hours, and his strength is at least acceptable. The protagonist gently places the vest on the ground so it will not cause any impact since it weighs 5 tons, but that makes the others think the vest was very light. One of them says that even if the protagonist has a bit of strength, he is still in last place and cannot compare to Tiantuo. However, they end up saying that this is not a problem because none of them can compare to Tiantuo anyway. Suddenly, people say that Tiantuo was coming out under 10 tons of pressure and that he endured it for more than 2 hours. He comes out of the gravity room completely exhausted and throws the vest onto the ground, causing a huge impact. He says that he is finally relieved and the people are frightened by such strength. Xinghe walks over to him and admits that he is no match for him when it comes to physical strength. but invites him to a contest in the movement technique room. Tiantuo says that this is practically impossible because his friend cultivates an A-rank movement technique and, on top of that, has a wind attribute, so there's no way to compete with that. Upon hearing that, the protagonist starts paying attention, because although his strength from the Overlord is immense, he still lacks an advanced movement technique. They go to the movement technique training room, and people are amazed, saying that it is an A-rank movement technique called Astonishing Swan Flying Cloud Steps, and it is very powerful. Xinghe was moving and attacking with astonishing ease, as if he were dancing on the clouds. People cannot believe how much energy that guy has. But just by watching, the protagonist manages to learn the basics, and that appears in the system, and he thinks that it is an excellent technique. He prepares to cultivate after carefully analyzing every detail of the movements, and the people say that it is hilarious, and ask how a guy could learn such an advanced technique just by watching. But with the help of the system, the protagonist perfectly performs the same movements as Xinghe. A few minutes later, the system congratulates him, saying that Astonishing Swan Flying Cloud Steps has been officially learned. Hong thinks that he finally managed to learn his first A-rank technique, but Xinghe's movements are much more extravagant and a little embarrassing. However, he did not see the normal version of that move, so he will have to learn it that way for now. The system sends the protagonist back to reality, and he thinks that now he has already learned the movement technique and there is no longer any need to train in the movement technique room, so he might as well go to the beast room to eliminate some monsters, gain martial arts points, and increase his vitality. However, he notices that people were looking at him. Some people say that the posture the protagonist had just now was extravagant and looked like he had Xinghe's talent. They point out that it really is amazing, but they definitely could not imitate him, since it is far too flashy. Hong is surprised to realize that he performed those same movements in reality. Embarrassed, he runs off, saying that now he can never use that guy as a learning model again. But he notices that someone was following him. The two people say that unfortunately they found him, and he is probably going to the beast training room, so they need to block the entrance, and as soon as he comes out, they will give him a proper beating. In the beast training room, Tiantuo asks if Yan really wants to compete with him in beast eliminations. She says that she only wants to know who truly is #1 in the training camp. Tiantuo asks whether she really thinks she can defeat his savage god body by relying on psychic power because she is underestimating him. However, she says that the one being underestimated there is her, and apparently, he does not know her true strength. The protagonist, who was watching that, realizes that he had never seen how a psychic fights before, so he will watch first and then fight the beasts to gain his points. He is surprised to see that she was levitating in the air because walking in the air is a technique that only grandmasters possess. In just an instant, she managed to eliminate 3 high-level first-stage black tigers simultaneously. He wonders what those lights are, but suddenly another monster appears behind her, and she manages to paralyze it in the air, making the protagonist even more surprised to see that she really can use psychic power to forcibly restrain and control enemies. And after she eliminates the last monster, the protagonist realizes that those rays of light were daggers. Hong thinks that she can walk in the air, manipulate objects from a distance, and forcibly control enemies. So it is no wonder that psychics are incredibly strong. They can easily crush ordinary martial artists. People are amazed, asking what is happening with that giant sword. Yan had created a huge sword and eliminated a python with just one move. The protagonist is surprised because she was not holding a weapon before. On top of that, such a large weapon should weigh several tons. Xinghe walks over and explains that this is an exclusive martial art for psychics and is even A rank. People say they have never seen anything like it before. However, people ask why those two have A rank skills and wonder if Tiantuo also has this kind of ability. Xinghe says yes, because he possesses an A rank offensive martial art. That makes the protagonist even happier to be there, because that place has a great abundance of A rank martial arts, so going there was the best choice. Tiantuo also enters the training room and begins eliminating the monsters with ease. But the protagonist is a little upset, since apparently that guy is not going to use his A-rank skill. But in the end, he thinks that it does not matter, because he will find another opportunity to learn from him later. Because at the moment, he only wants to become a psychic, but his spiritual power is only 26.5. They say that the user needs more than 100 points of spiritual power to become a psychic, so he still needs another 73.5. Which means that he needs 735 martial arts points, so he will have to go on a killing spree. As soon as the people leave, the protagonist enters and the two people who were waiting for him begin approaching, saying that everyone is watching Tiantuo and Yan and no one is paying attention to where they are. So this is a great chance, and they will rush in and eliminate that boy. Suddenly, one of them is shocked and cries out in fright. His companion asks why he is yelling. The protagonist was challenging more than a dozen beasts at the same time, and all of them were high-level first-stage beasts. They ask whether he is some kind of madman. They say that they should get an instructor to save him, otherwise that boy will definitely be dead. But one of them says that now it is already too late and he will be torn to pieces in seconds, so they will not get their revenge. But on the inside, the protagonist was excited and tells the monsters to come at him all at once. The monsters try to attack him, but he dodges their attacks and manages to counterattack with extreme ease. Outside, the two ask whether they are dreaming, wondering if that is something a first-stage martial artist can do. Because even if a mid-level martial artist were surrounded by a dozen high-level beasts, he certainly would not get out alive. The other tells them to wait a moment because the technique the protagonist is using looks a little familiar. They realize that it is the same technique as Xinghei's, and that cannot be right because he is a high school student, so he should not have access to such a high-level movement technique. Or perhaps he could be from some prominent family. The other says that maybe it is possible that he learned it just by watching Xinghei perform his movements. But the long-haired guy says that it is an A-rank movement technique and insists that a person cannot master it after seeing it only once, which makes him wonder how terrifying the protagonist's talent is. The other says that maybe they should simply forget about it because they will not be able to take revenge on Hong, and even if both of them fought together at the same time, they would not be enough to defeat him. But the long-haired guy says that it does not matter whether the protagonist is from a rich family or a genius. He cannot swallow the humiliation he suffered. The short-haired one says that before picking a fight with that boy, he had better take a look at that. The long-haired guy looks up and drops his staff, unable to believe what he was seeing, because they had talked for only a few minutes, and 10 high-level first-stage beasts had already been killed. Inside, Hong looks at the system and says that a dozen high-level first-stage beasts gave a total of 81 martial arts points, with an average of only 7 points per beast. And it seems that the stronger he gets, the harder it becomes to gain martial arts points. New monsters were released inside the training room, and the protagonist stands up, saying that there is no time to rest and he needs to keep going. He goes on destroying them all as if it were absolutely nothing. More monsters begin to gather, trying to trap him in the center. Hong says that he is not the one trapped with the monsters are trapped with him. He continues destroying all the monsters around him, leaving the two outside completely speechless at that sight. The long-haired guy, who had previously been determined to take revenge, looks at his friend and says that recently he has been taking life more lightly, so he decided to forgive the protagonist. His companion says that this is the best option, and that they need to leave immediately because they do not want to be defeated by that monster again. While they were returning dejectedly to the middle of the crowd, the others say that Tiantuo managed to defeat a total of 8 beasts in less than 10 minutes. Other young people say that the two of them have already returned, and that they had gone looking for revenge against that boy. He asks if everything went well, and the two laugh and say yes. However, the two were thinking that if they had not acted wisely, they would probably now be getting hauled by a truck into a ditch. The two come out of the training room. Tiantuo says that he got 280 points, and Yan 270. People are impressed by that score because they must have eliminated several monsters. Tiantuo looks at his watch, which counts the points, saying that the contribution points were collected, and he got a total of 100 points. Yan takes a deep breath, saying that unfortunately she only got 50. The other people say that they got between 30 and 20 points. Therefore, they say that with those 3 monsters around, they can only compete for 4th place. But the two who had been looking for revenge think that everyone there is ignorant, because there is an even more terrifying prodigy in the training camp, easily surpassing those 3 monsters. 1 hour later, the protagonist's cage was completely in chaos, looking as if a nuclear bomb had fallen there. He was sitting on top of the remains of the monsters, exhausted from so much fighting. He thinks that after fighting beasts continuously for more than an hour, even with the Overlord body, he is feeling completely drained. However, he is still far from the 735 martial arts points. Still, he managed to gain 700 contribution points, and would like to know what he can redeem in the martial arts pavilion with that. A short time later, inside the pavilion, he looks through the book to see what he could buy and realizes that A-rank martial arts are extremely expensive, because the cheapest one there costs 2,000 points, and the prices of the pills are quite reasonable, especially because they have spirit-gathering pills there. The attendant takes a deep breath and asks if he has already decided what he wants to redeem. She thinks that apparently the protagonist is only at the initial stage of the first division and probably cannot get anything. He asks her if the spirit-gathering pills there can really increase spiritual power. The woman says yes. She explains that spirit-gathering pills only take effect the first time they are consumed. The higher the grade, the better the effect. The protagonist thinks that the highest grade spirit-gathering pill there is the grade 4-1, costing 500 contribution points. He asks her for a grade 4 spirit gathering pill. The woman cannot believe what she just heard. She says that a grade 4 spirit gathering pill costs 500 contribution points, not 50. Hong tells her that he already knows that and shows that he has 700 contribution points, and she cannot believe what she is seeing. She quickly changes her attitude, becomes charmed by the protagonist, and quickly hands the spirit gathering pill to him. He asks if she also has light alloy long spears with dual thunder and fire attributes. She says yes and points out that they cost only 200 points, and thanks him very much for his visit, calling him handsome. Now he has both spears. Back in his room, he looks at the system panel and realizes that his vitality and guiding arts have improved again. In addition, he also managed to gain 490 martial arts points. He thinks that the improvement he had that day is greater than in the entire previous week. On top of that, he also has the spirit gathering pill. He thinks that he currently has 26.5 spirit points. Combined with 490 martial arts points, he is still 25.5 away from reaching 100 points. Because of that, he hopes that the spirit gathering pill will provide an increase of at least 25.5 in spirit. He swallows the pill, thinking that he is almost becoming a psychic as well. As soon as he swallows it, the effect of that level 4 spirit gathering pill takes effect immediately. All the fatigue in his nerves disappears, and that is incredible. His mind becomes unbelievably clear, and he can feel everything around him. As soon as he opens his eyes and looks at the system panel, he realizes that his spiritual level is at 50.5, which means that his spiritual power increased by 24 points. He is surprised by the effect of a level 4 pill. However, he does the math and realizes that with the 50.5, he has plus 490 martial arts points. That is equivalent to 99.5. So he is only 0.5 away from his goal. And that is only 5 martial arts points. And if he had known, he would have eliminated one more monster before leaving. He lies down on his bed, saying that it is a pity. And now he will have to wait until tomorrow to accumulate more martial arts points. The next day, in the training camp warehouse, people had already gathered. A big man asks Bu Jingfeng if he is not training at the martial arts university and asks how he got called over. Another person says that is right and asks why they are there since the older students are serving those brats. Jingfeng gets irritated, saying that those people are not geniuses because if he were still in high school, none of those kids would be qualified to train alongside him. The bigger companion says that the boy he is in charge of is called Tian Tuo and has a vitality of 340 and says that Jingfeng did not have that kind of level in his day. The others laugh and he is surprised. Another says that the one he is in charge of has vitality above 300, and the one with glasses and the big mustache says that his is a psychic and is also very strong. Jingfeng asks why the students they are in charge of are all strong, while his is only low-level first stage, with 123 vitality points. Jingfeng was assigned to the protagonist, and everyone is surprised, asking how he got such a low-level one, since he is the strongest, so there is probably something wrong. Tianli appears saying that there is no mistake, but Jingfeng walks up to his master and says that this is a little insulting because that is just a piece of trash in the low level of the first stage. The Grandmaster says that the protagonist is not as simple as he looks because his combat power is comparable to that of a high-level first-stage martial artist. Everyone is impressed, thinking that with only 123 vitality points, his combat power is comparable to that of a high-level first-stage martial artist. They ask what kind of monster that boy is. Tianli explains that some of the protagonist's files are confidential, so they were not included in the information given to him, and he will probably understand everything when they fight. Jingfeng takes a deep breath in discouragement, saying that he has 500 vitality points and is about to advance to the second stage, but his master insists on asking him to intimidate a boy with only 123 vitality points. Tianli tells him to do only what he was ordered to do. On top of that, the Grandmaster points out that Jingfeng must go all out and defeat the protagonist in a humiliating way, making him doubt his own existence. Jingfeng becomes confused and asks his master if he has some kind of grudge against that student, because he will not take responsibility if he leaves the protagonist crippled. Tianli looks at Jingfeng and says, "That is very good," ordering him to beat the protagonist until he is crippled. And if that happens, he will not be blamed, but will receive a reward instead. Jingfeng thinks that the master's smile is frightening, and apparently, that boy named Hong is in serious trouble. The master tells them to stop talking and begin the operation immediately. During the night, all of them were about to attack their targets, and everyone begins shouting that they are being ambushed. The protagonist wakes up from the noise and realizes that his door was being broken down. Jingfeng bursts in and tries to attack him, but the protagonist manages to dodge. Hong thinks that he heard that the myriad races often hunt human geniuses to weaken humanity's strength, and maybe it could be them. He grabs his spear, thinking that he does not know what level that opponent is. Jingfeng charges again, shouting that this was to be expected. The protagonist is just a low-level brat and had terrible luck in running into him. Hong is surprised to see that his opponent is actually a human high-level first-stage martial artist, and not one of the myriad races. He smiles and thinks that this is perfect because it is exactly what he needed. As long as he can defeat that idiot, he will be able to collect the 5 martial arts points he was missing to become a psychic. Jingfeng cannot understand why a mere low-level first-stage martial artist is not dodging, but instead ready to attack, and maybe he has gone mad. As soon as the two collide in the first exchange, Jingfeng realizes that that boy's power is indeed very strong. His combat power is truly comparable to that of a high-level first-stage martial artist. However, he realizes that something is wrong because that level of power is not something a first-stage martial artist should have. The protagonist thinks that his opponent is only a high-level first-stage martial artist, and it is not as if he has never fought one before. He releases even more of his strength and sends his opponent backward. Jingfeng starts trembling, thinking that that boy is a true monster. However, battles between martial artists are not just about who has more brute force. Hong realizes that his opponent is using a martial art with the fire attribute, and this is the first time he has seen a real attack, and he begins releasing his attribute as well. Jingfeng attacks the protagonist, asking how he is going to deal with that B-rank martial art called Burning Slash. The protagonist thinks that this momentum is much stronger than Void-Destroying Finger, although both are at the same level. He releases his lightning attribute and counterattacks. The two attacks collide, causing a huge explosion, but both of them are still standing. Jingfeng thinks that the protagonist did not use any martial art, he only used released lightning to block his fire attribute technique. And that boy's talent is terrifying, so it is no wonder that his master told him to do all of that. Jingfeng points out that it is a pity that the protagonist does not know a spear technique with the lightning attribute, otherwise he would not have been able to defeat him so easily. Hong laughs, saying that indeed he does not possess a spear technique with the lightning attribute, however if he adds a mixture everything will become simpler. He imbues his spear with fire and then immediately adds lightning. Jingfeng shouts, asking how that is possible, because he has never seen attribute fusion before. He thinks that the elements repel each other, and that is a principle every martial artist knows. As for attribute fusion with the power of lightning and fire, he thought that was only a legend. Hong fixes his gaze on his prey and charges forward with everything he has. Jingfeng tries to counterattack by using Burning Slash again, but as soon as the blows collide, the protagonist's power is overwhelmingly greater. Jingfeng thinks that that boy's power is incomparable as he is thrown backward, crashing through the wall of the room. Hong looks through the hole in the wall and realizes that the system recorded 7 more points for him. He smiles, thinking that now he has enough points to become a psychic. A few seconds earlier, Tianli and Baimu were outside watching. He points out that the time has come and that Hong has probably already been defeated by Jingfeng. He thinks that he has already prepared several sets of arguments to convince the protagonist to give up practicing multiple elements at the same time, because he will definitely be able to persuade him that night. But suddenly the wall breaks, and Jingfeng flies out from inside, landing completely knocked out right in front of them. The two are shocked by that. Baimu cannot believe what she is seeing, because if that guy is there, it means the protagonist managed to defeat him. Suddenly, 3 more are thrown outside. The entire team that the master had sent to sabotage his students ended up being defeated. Xinghe shouts for the master to send someone stronger next time, because that was not enough of a challenge. Tiantuo notices that there are 4 defeated people. Yan notices it too and asks if there is someone else in that area and whether it is possible that someone won before they did. Xinghe says that perhaps that other martial artist was very weak and got eliminated easily, but Baimu thinks it was the complete opposite. In fact, the first one to be defeated was the strongest among the 4. Tianli thinks that Tiantuo and Xinghe are both high-level first-stage cultivators, and Yan is a psychic, so it is normal for them to be able to win. But Hong is only low-level first stage, and for him to defeat a martial artist who is nearly second stage faster than the others is something astonishing. The master wonders how he really did it, whether it was because of a top-tier martial art or a physique so impressive that it surpasses everything else. Linz appears, telling his master that something huge happened, but the master tells him to wait, asking whether some student was accidentally killed and what problem could be more important than what he is dealing with. Linz explains that it is about the protagonist because when he was fighting Jingfeng, he used attribute fusion. The master thinks that now it is explained because he used a fusion guiding art, so it is no wonder that he managed to win. But suddenly he stops and analyzes what he just heard and shouts, asking what Linz just said, because he cannot simply make a statement like that out of nowhere. Lenz confirms that the protagonist really fused lightning and fire and unleashed a dual attribute guiding art to defeat his target, because he saw it clearly in the surveillance footage, and if not for that, he would not have believed it either. And if the master still does not believe it, then he can just ask Jingfeng when he wakes up. Jingfeng wakes up and starts trembling, saying that it is true. He confirms that the protagonist used a dual attribute fusion of lightning and fire. Tianli still cannot believe it, shouting that the only genius martial artist of the human race to develop dual attribute fusion took more than a dozen years to achieve it. Lin says that according to the protagonist's school report, he was exposed to the 7 attribute guiding arts less than a month ago. Tianli becomes proud, saying that the protagonist is a monster. Or perhaps better than that, perhaps he is a star sent from the heavens, a true dragon revealed to the world. Linz asks his master if attribute fusion is really powerful enough for a low-level first-stage cultivator to defeat someone nearly second stage like Jingfeng. Tianli explains that the martial artist who developed attribute fusion in the past was able to suppress second-stage warriors while still in the first stage. Bai Mu becomes confused and says that if this combat power is so powerful, then why is it not encouraged more? Because even if it is difficult, sometimes people might still succeed. The master points out that many people tried to do that back then, but discovered that it is not only extremely difficult, but also highly likely to ruin one's cultivation. Even if a person succeeds, if they remain a first-stage martial artist for the rest of their life, what would be the point of that? However, Hong succeeded in less than a month, and his comprehension is simply heaven-defying. On top of that, he is practicing all 7 attributes, and if he fuses all of them, then Tianli can barely imagine how insane that power would be. If a monster like that truly grows, then perhaps he could stun the emperors of the myriad races with a single move. Bai Mu and Linz tell their master that maybe he is exaggerating too much, because fusing 2 attributes is already basically impossible, and 7 would be something that could only be accomplished in a fantasy world. Tianli tells the 2 of them to forget what he just said because he was in a state of shock. Because if they let the protagonist continue practicing all 7, he will be trapped at the mark of 3 attribute fusion and will not be able to advance. And if that happens, he himself, Tianli, will become the greatest sinner of the human race for ruining the future most powerful being that has ever set foot on that planet. Linz remembers that he had forgotten to mention that the protagonist definitely has a special physique, because his raw power managed to crush Jingfeng. The master says that this is extremely important, and he had forgotten to mention it earlier. Bai Mu cannot believe that the protagonist has only 123 vitality points, and yet his raw power crushed an opponent who has nearly 500 points. Linz points out that this is a 4-fold difference in vitality, and that increase in power far exceeds Tiantuo's savage god body. The master points out that that boy's physique may also be a heaven-defying existence. He looks inside and thinks that he arranged a sparring match for the morning, and wants to test the protagonist's combat power and vitality values in every aspect. He orders Bai Mu and Linz to bring Tiantuo, Xinghe, and Yan to fight Hong because he really wants to see what happens when a monster faces the strongest geniuses of the training camp. Meanwhile, inside his room, the protagonist was sitting there looking at the system. He puts all of his martial arts points into spirit and finally manages to become a psychic. As he transforms, he feels a completely strange sensation, like creating a third arm completely out of nowhere, and that feels a little strange to him. At present, his spirit is at 100.2%. He looks at the bed and realizes that he can move everything around him, just like Yan. And now his next step is to learn that A-rank psychic technique she used earlier. In addition, there is still Tiantuo's A-rank offensive martial art. The next morning, an announcement is made saying that they have 1 minute to be ready, because every second of delay will be deducted from their contribution points. The students begin running downstairs. Most of them were a little injured because of the ambush the night before, but they quickly begin gathering outside. Linz is impressed, saying that this is very good because not a single person was late, and the truth is that he thought many of them would barely be able to get up after the beating they took last night. So they really are living up to the name of geniuses. One of the students tells the instructor that he could have won last night's fight, but he was caught off guard because his opponent did not even let him put on his pants and kept aiming at his private parts. And that is the only reason why he lost. Linz asks if, in the event that the attacker had been an assassin from the myriad races, he would have been able to ask him to wait so he could put on his pants. Everyone starts laughing and gives him the nickname Pants Bro. Hong thinks that although the instructor is right, real combat does not care whether the person is prepared or not. However, after a long day and an ambush at midnight, it is normal to feel some resentment. Linz says that he already knows that many of them are unhappy, so that day they are receiving another chance to show what they are made of, since they are going to carry out a comprehensive test. And that includes absolutely everything: vitality, combat power, spirit, physical strength, and speed, as well as mastery of martial techniques. So they are going to test absolutely everything and everyone. After the test, they will carry out a real combat ranking. The top 10 students will receive varying amounts of contribution points every day. People look at the 3 geniuses and think that the top 3 places will definitely stay among them. So they have to focus on competing for 4th through 10th place in order to win the rewards. The protagonist wonders what the reward is for first place in the ranking test. Linz asks them all to calm down and follow him to the testing area. They go to the warehouse of the temporary training camp. He explains that that is a detector. Tianli was also present, looks at the protagonist and sees that he is hiding in the middle of the crowd, which means that he really does not want to stand out. A boy who was beside the protagonist gets excited, thinking that the master is looking at him and maybe has some expectations, but the protagonist looks and realizes that he is thinking about it the wrong way, since the person Tianli is looking at is himself. The master explains that he has high hopes for all of them, so on a whim, he decided that whoever takes first place in the comprehensive ranking of combat power, vitality, speed, and so on will receive an extra reward, an A-rank martial art or movement technique of the winner's choice. All the competitors become excited. Tiantuo thinks that A-rank martial arts are not just cabbages in the marketplace, because even his powerful family only has a few. Yan also gets excited, thinking that she only has to take first place in the comprehensive test and she will be able to choose whatever she wants. Xinghe thinks that if he can get an A-rank technique that complements his cloud steps, no one will ever dare say again that speed is useless. But what no one was expecting is that the true monster was also interested in it. He smiles, thinking that he absolutely cannot let another A-rank martial art slip away. Tianli looks at the protagonist, thinking that now he is going to see how strong and what the true power of that monstrously talented young man really is. He tells Xinghe to go first, Yan second, and Tiantuo third. The students are a little startled, asking if it really was that intense from the start, and if those 3 are going first, then who would dare go right after them? Tianli says that Hong will go 4th. Everyone is surprised except the protagonist, because obviously the master has his eyes on him. The students ask whether the protagonist was not the person who came in last in the entrance exam, and they try to comfort him, saying that he has the worst luck in the world and wondering if he somehow offended the master. The students continue saying that putting the 3 strongest first and the weakest last is a brutal contrast, and that this might be very stimulating. And the master probably wants to use that to motivate the lower level students, hoping they will feel ashamed and work even harder. However, the 2 people who had been beaten and had sought revenge against the protagonist, who already knew his strength, stay quiet and think that everyone will be stunned in a few seconds. Xinghe gets ready for the test, and the instructor tells him to remember that first they will only do the physical combat test and then the martial arts combat power test. Xinghe says that combat energy detectors are not exactly his strong point, but he gives it everything he has and manages, with physical strength alone, to score 4,013 points. The students are shocked to see that he achieved combat power of more than 4,000 with just his punch. On top of that, he had said that this was his weakness, and compared to his terrifying speed in the agility chamber, raw physical combat power is indeed his greatest weakness. Hong was watching attentively while smiling because Xinghe can practice an A-rank movement technique, so his martial skills definitely will not be bad either. So it has to be at least a B-rank martial art, and he is going to try to use his eyes together with the system to try to copy it in the brief demonstration while he releases his power. Xinghe releases his martial technique together with his attribute and manages a score of 5,642. The people are even more shocked by what he achieved, with a total of more than 5,600 points, because that is already the standard of a second-stage martial artist, which means their combat power is utterly ridiculous. And the scariest part is that this is definitely that young man's weak point. However, that brief demonstration of a few seconds was already enough. The protagonist obtained the new wind martial art, Hidden Gale Cloud Fist. However, he thinks that using a B-rank martial art only increases combat power by 1,600 points, and that increase is a little too small for him. Yan jokes with Xinghe, saying that it is all right because she assumes he got a little lazy. Xinghe just laughs and wishes the young lady good luck. Yan achieves a combat power using only her physical strength of 3,253. The protagonist thinks that it is normal for a psychic's physical body to be a little weak, because the key lies in psychic martial arts. Yan concentrates and creates a psychic hammer, and that is enough for the protagonist to copy again, and just by watching, he managed to obtain the psychic martial art, weapon condensation art. He thinks that this training camp is being something truly incredible for him, which makes him wonder how many more martial arts he can copy that day. She uses her massive hammer to strike the target, causing a powerful impact. Her combat score rises to 5,949. People are once again impressed to see that her score was even higher than Xinghe's, which means that she nearly doubled her standard physical strength. And this is the explosive power of a psychic, truly a favorite of the heavens. While everyone was impressed by that, the protagonist was only concentrating on improving what he had just copied. The scariest part is that beyond explosive power, psychic energy allows aerial movement and object manipulation, which means that she has enormous flexibility in real combat. In a few seconds, the protagonist manages to improve his technique a little. He thinks that weapon condensation art can manifest anything, not just weapons. He can even manifest tables, chairs, or even spirit beasts. Even so, the more tangible the manifestation is, the more psychic energy it consumes. With his current psychic energy level, it seems difficult to master it immediately. However, he will learn it slowly later. Now it is Tiantuo's turn, and he needs to pay attention to see the martial art he is going to use. As soon as he begins to step up for the test, people pay attention, because he possesses the savage god body, which means that his physical strength is terrifyingly great, so he has an absolute advantage in combat power, and is certainly guaranteed first place. Hong watches carefully while wondering what the difference is between the savage god body and the overlord that he possesses. Tiantuo goes all out, telling them to watch carefully, because that punch is the gap that exists between them. The students are shocked, saying that this cannot be possible, because that guy's raw physical punch has only a 300-point difference from Xinghe's combat power using his full martial art. And that strength is legendary, and probably because of the savage god body. Tianli praises his student, saying that this is very good. Tiantuo thanks him for the praise and says that now he will use his martial art. The protagonist gets excited, thinking that the time has finally come for the A-rank offensive martial art he uses. Tiantuo begins to focus and channels a dense energy into his fists. The master is impressed, seeing that he's about to use the A-rank Phantom Bone Hellfire Fist. Very quickly, the system manages to absorb that martial art, and the protagonist is impressed, because he remembers that same martial art is in the martial arts pavilion, and costs 2,800 contribution points to exchange for it. Tiantuo goes all out to strike the target and achieves 7,534 combat power points. The students shout, saying that with just 500 more points, he would reach the standard for a mid-level second-stage martial artist with 600 vitality points. In addition, his vitality points were around 350. Tianli says that was excellent and points out that Tiantuo's father spent half his life praying for a grandmaster in the family, and apparently that will no longer be a problem. Tiantuo thanks him again and says that he will believe his master's words. Tianli says that now it is the protagonist's turn, and he begins walking toward the testing area. As he walks, the others say that the first three performed absurdly well, so whoever goes now will look incredibly pathetic. However, they notice that the protagonist seems very calm, because if it were them, they would be nervous to death. Another says that dead pigs do not fear boiling water, and that is probably why he is calm. Tianli explains that the first punch is only physical strength and martial arts are not allowed. Hong says that is fine and focuses on throwing his punch. He takes a deep breath and charges forward, saying that this test reward has to be his. His physical punch is so strong that it causes a huge explosion, scoring 6,551 points. Linz is impressed, and the master thinks that he underestimated how strong that boy can be. All the other students stand there speechless, unable to believe the score they are seeing. They say that the combat power detector must be broken because that is the same boy who was in the back, so why does it feel as though he is suddenly a complete monster out of nowhere? Because they thought Tiantuo was invincible in that training camp, but there is a hidden potential lurking there. Yan points out that that combat power is far too outrageous. Xinghe also cannot believe it, saying that there is no way a first-stage martial artist could produce that level of combat power, and he must be second stage. Tiantuo realizes that he had been acting too arrogantly before. The protagonist asks his master whether he should proceed with his martial art, and the master says yes. Hong focuses and, with the help of the system, begins perfecting Phantom Bone Hellfire Fist, because this seems to be the most suitable move for him, since learning it is much faster than Cloud Steps, even though both are A-rank. Tianli asks Linz how high he thinks the protagonist's combat power can go when he uses a martial art. Linz asks the master not to forget that the protagonist came from an ordinary family, so his martial arts should not be of a very high level. But the master corrects the instructor, saying that in the state the protagonist is in now, he definitely was not using a low-level martial art. The system warns that Phantom Bone Hellfire Fist has reached 100%, and now it is at the beginner level. As soon as he activates the skill, the students realize that it is the same technique Tiantuo is using and ask how he managed to get that. Hong prepares to throw the second punch and thinks that he would really like to see the true power of an A-rank offensive martial art. His punch causes an absurd roar and enormous pressure inside the room. The people present say that that combat power is even higher than Tiantuo's, but as soon as they look ahead, they realize that he achieved 9,013 combat power points, because that is the standard for a high-level second-stage martial artist. Linz looks again at the notes, questioning what kind of combat power that is for a low-level first-stage martial artist with only 137 vitality points, because those stats must be wrong. Tianli says that that boy truly is an uncontrollable monster. Xinghe shouts that 7,000 points is low-level second stage, 8,000 points is mid-level, and 9,000 points is high-level. Yan says that the standard for a second-stage martial artist is 500 vitality points, so the protagonist must be hiding his vitality, because it is definitely above 500 points. Tiantuo assumes that his own vitality still has not reached 400, so there is no shame in losing to that monster. But as soon as they see that his vitality is 137, they cannot believe it and ask whether the detector is broken. Lin says that this is truly absurd. The other students ask if they are sure that could not be 1,370 and maybe the machine just dropped to 0. Because if that is not true, it means Hong is actually only a low-level first-stage martial artist, since that is completely ridiculous. How can a person with 137 vitality points produce more than 9,000 combat power points? Hong steps out of the machine and the master keeps watching him. Tianli says that everything is fine and asks everyone to stop crowding around there, because now they need to go to the next test, which is the combat test, and now they will go directly to the combat ranking tournament. He explains that the tournament uses a challenge system, so they themselves can challenge their opponents. When no one else dares to challenge you, you will be ranked first and receive the A-rank martial art as a reward. Xinghe calls out to the master and says that he would like to fight the protagonist. He thinks that although that boy's combat power is basically invincible, his vitality is still too weak, so he only needs to dodge his attacks with his flawless footwork, and relying on his superior speed, can win that fight by wearing his opponent down. But Tianli denies the challenge, saying that he cannot challenge him alone, but if the three geniuses want, they can all fight Hong at the same time. The three get irritated, asking if he really wants all three of them to attack at the same time, because apparently they are being looked down on. Because if that happens by accident, they might end up crippling that boy. The principal asks the protagonist if that is fine with him. Hong says that he has no objections. That makes the three even more irritated, asking if he really thinks he can put them in his pocket, because he is acting far too arrogantly, wanting to fight all three at once when he can barely beat even one. They prepare for combat, and the principal tells them to begin immediately. The three rush in with everything they have, and Xinghe thinks that he will release Frozen Wind Fist and then retreat. As soon as the protagonist is engaged in combat with the others, he will launch a sneak attack. With his speed, the protagonist will not be able to react. The two who are a little farther back notice the danger and tell Xinghe to dodge immediately. Before he could do anything, the protagonist had moved so fast that he was already behind him, preparing to finish him off. But before the protagonist's punch could hit him, he is pulled backward by Yan's psychic power. Xinghe thanks her for the help and says that that boy's speed is unusual, so they need to be careful. Hong analyzes the situation and realizes that this is psychic power, and it is the first time he has experienced the feeling of being controlled, and it feels quite unusual to him. He sees that that girl is going to be a problem, so perhaps he needs to deal with her first. He quickly charges forward to try to hit her. Yan freezes in fear, seeing that those are the rising cloud steps that Xinghe uses. Xinghe cannot understand how the protagonist is using that move because his attribute should be fire. Tiantuo points out that that boy probably has a dual attribute, so they need to stop him immediately. Tiantuo steps in front, saying that he will protect Yan. Meanwhile, she needs to use the power of mental control. He charges forward with Hellfire Fist, but Hong meets the blow head-on. Yan uses her psychic power to control him, and the protagonist thinks that that mental control is the most troublesome thing, even more than he had imagined. Xinghe goes all out, saying that the protagonist really is a monster, but he will not be able to dodge that kick. The director thinks that apparently letting that boy fight against all three of them was a decision he made too early, because a psychic's abilities are very difficult to deal with. Once controlled by a psychic, the target can only push forward with raw physical strength or counterattack with his own mental power. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to break free. He looks at the protagonist and thinks that his physical strength is very strong, but it should not be enough to break free. However, he notices that Hong was smiling. The two continue closing in, but Hong, using only the physical strength of his body, manages to free himself. The pressure was so great that it struck Yan as well. She cannot believe that he actually used brute force to forcibly disperse her mental power. The protagonist catches Xinghe's and Tiantuo's attacks with his bare hands, leaving everyone else shocked because he blocked the attacks of two geniuses with physical strength alone. And he even managed to use physical strength to disperse another genius's psychic power, and that is outrageous. That boy's strength is inhuman. Hong grabs his two opponents tightly and begins smashing them into the ground over and over again. The impacts grew stronger and stronger, and everyone else was horrified by the brutality of it. The protagonist kept slamming them into the ground as if they were absolutely nothing to him. A short while later, he lets go of the two of them and, irritated by the situation, looks at Yan and says that he expected a little more fun. Just from his gaze, she is completely shaken and screams at him not to come any closer because she surrenders immediately. The other students ask if that can really be true, whether he really won, because the top 3 of the training camp were defeated by just one boy, which means that he is an existence that defies the laws of the human world. The director looks at the others and asks what they are shouting about and whether anyone else present would like to challenge Hong, because if no one else challenges him, then he will be number 1 in that practical combat session. The students say that the protagonist can be number 1 in the training camp because there is no need to continue the competition since they do not want to be beaten to death. After witnessing a fight as humiliating as that one, only an idiot would dare challenge a monster like him. Tianli says that if that is the case, then Su Hong is number 1, and those ranked from 2nd to 10th in the martial arts competition will receive rewards. Then they will continue the competition as organized by instructor Linz. He looks at the protagonist and says that the undisputed number 1 needs to go with him to receive his reward because he needs to choose an A-rank martial art immediately. Hong smiles because his goal has been achieved. Now he will have a new A-rank martial art. As they walked, the director tells him that since the day he entered the training camp, he had already been under observation. However, the other students were always eager to show off their strength, and because of that, he would like to know why the protagonist hid himself for so long. Hong explains that he has no power or influence, so standing out too early would make him an easy target. Tianli laughs, saying that he likes intelligent people like him, and he points out that that practical combat tournament was organized especially by him, because he wanted to secure more resources for the protagonist. The director points out that in today's world, the strong grow stronger, and resources are concentrated only among geniuses. So he tells the protagonist that he no longer needs to hide his strength, since he, as director and grandmaster Qin Tianli, will protect him. Then he says that he would very much like to see who would still dare to bother the protagonist. Hong bows before the director and thanks him greatly for all the help he is giving him. A short time later at the martial arts pavilion, the attendant is surprised to see the master there. Tianli tells her to bring the list of martial arts. The director tells the protagonist to look carefully and choose with care, and if he does not understand something, he can just ask. Hong asks his master what martial art he thinks he should choose. The director asks which martial arts the protagonist currently knows. Hong says that he has Phantom Bone Hellfire Fist, Astonishing Ascending Cloud Steps, Hidden Cloud Wind Fist, Void Destroying Finger, and the rest are lower level. Tianli looks at him and says that Astonishing Ascending Cloud Steps and Hidden Cloud Wind Fist do not exist in the martial arts pavilion, and asks whether he learned them just by watching Xinghe perform them once. Hong just laughs, which confirms the story. Tianli is shocked once again, thinking that that boy's monstrousness has no limits and is so powerful that it borders on the absurd. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.